In Marvel, I am Homelander. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 126: Smart Terminals. Ring ring. Inside the White House, Penny, still in her pajamas, woke up from her soft bed. She glanced at the jarring alarm clock. It was already 8 in the morning. This was her third day in this world, and looking back, it had been the most leisurely days of her life. She ate, played, and when she was tired, she'd just collapse into bed and sleep, then wake up and continue playing without any pressure. Although it was decadent, compared to her previous days of getting up early every morning for intense training and being ready for battle at any moment, this was paradise. John, I'm up, so let's keep playing. Penny changed her clothes and ran to the next room, looking at the sleeping Homelander. After 3 days of getting to know each other, her address had changed from you to Mr. Homelander, and finally, she'd simply called John by his name. You've really had a blast these past 2 days, John said, rubbing his hair and looking at Penny. Open your mouth. Ah. Penny obediently opened her mouth, revealing her neat, white teeth, and then felt the taste of toothpaste filing her mouth, while her hair felt incredibly clean. I've washed you up, go play by yourself. John changed into a slightly formal outfit and casually instructed, looking at the girl in front of him with a feeling of raising a pet. Penny looked at John in his formal attire and asked doubtfully, aren't you going to play? John rolled his eyes. Do you think everyone is as leisurely as you? I have some things to take care of later. The girl blushed slightly, looked at the game controllers piled up in front of the sofa, and suddenly felt that playing alone was not fun. She turned her head and said, can I come too? Just to see how you become emperor. No problem. John said indifferently, then took a wrist, and in an instant they arrived in the neighboring New York City, where 5 completed nuclear fusion reactors were densely packed together. Your Majesty, you've arrived? Rodriguez saw John appear and hurriedly came to greet him. Is that all? John frowned slightly, somewhat dissatisfied. With the help of the entire world and 8 days of work, this was all they had. Your Majesty, no one has ever built reactors on such a large scale before. But in less than a month, once the reactors are scaled up, as long as the materials keep up, we can produce more than 100 reactors a day on average, Rodriguez said. Of course, there was one point he didn't mention. Because of John's 8-hour workday and a lot of annual leave, manpower was extremely tight, and most of the slaves were used to fill the original productivity gaps. 800 reactors a week? In a few months, even 100 a day won't be enough to feed me. John frowned deeply. It seemed he still had to return to his original universe, where there was plenty of labor and materials for him to squander. What about those slaves? Let them postpone the vanity project of building the statue, and then double their efforts on the reactors, John said irritably. It was unclear who started it, but now all the original countries were preparing to build a landmark, colossal statue of the fatherland in their capitals, wanting to test the limits of materials. Under such a shortage of human resources, the waste of slaves was extremely serious. Wasn't this just pure nonsense? John, what's the point of building so many reactors? Penny asked curiously from the side. It's for eating, John said casually, then, as before, used PIM particles to shrink the activated reactor in front of him and swallowed it amidst the astonished gazes of those around him. The moment he swallowed it, the gradually fading feeling of fullness within his cells reappeared, and John felt a +2 appear above his head. If his combat power 9 days ago was a 1, then in these 9 days, his strength had increased by an average of +1.03 n being the number of days he swallowed reactors, the total number of reactors per day in terms of physical attributes. Simultaneously, each reactor increased his cell's capacity limit by 10% per day. Now, after swallowing another 1, he could clearly feel that, under the influence of the 2 reactors in his abdomen, his strength increase rate had roughly doubled. He only needed 5 days to eat another 1. Before long, he could consume 300 reactors a day, then 30 million, 30,000, and 300,000, at which point the production rate wouldn't be able to keep up with his consumption rate. Perhaps I should find some special abilities to learn, such as illusion manifestation or alchemy based on equivalent exchange, John muttered to himself. At this rate, humanity's manufacturing capacity won't be able to keep up with his demands. Is this what you meant by dealing with? Eating a fusion reactor? Looking at John's blissful expression, Penny understood why he was so capable. Of course, more than that. John looked at Rodriguez and said, "Bring up your inventions." "Yes, Your Majesty." Rodriguez respectfully took out a wristband-like object from the site and said, "This is a toy that Dr. Olivia tinkered with in her spare time. Please take a look." Oh. John picked up the wristband and scanned it up and down with his supervision. Compared to the space-time collider, it was indeed a small, incredibly rudimentary gadget. Dr. Olivia said that once this wristband is worn, it scans personal features to match an identity ID, monitors and detects the surrounding environment in real time, and finally uploads the data to a terminal system via the network. It can then be used as everyone's ID card. If every citizen wears this identity terminal, AI can monitor their daily behavior in real time, which will be a huge help in curbing crime and ensuring rapid police response. As long as it's connected to the internet, it can be used directly for payments. With simple processing, the terminal also has Bluetooth, waterproofing, location tracking, a virtual screen, wireless charging, and a whole host of other functions. It can even be fitted with an electric shock device. If illegal activity is detected, it can release a strong current immediately to stop the crime. Rodriguez described the terminal's functions like a prized possession, making John's eyes light up. Great! How much does this wristband cost? Can it be mass-produced? John asked, stroking the wristband. As long as the production line can mass-produce millions of smart terminals every day, we plan to make this a citizen welfare program, providing it free of charge. We'll pilot it in the capital, then roll it out globally, eventually ensuring every citizen wears a terminal. Good idea, but the electric shock device requires human consent to activate. John nodded, worried that someone might create a machine crisis and wipe out all of humanity. Chapter 127 Magical Slaves and Immortality for All. Inside the storage facility of a large nuclear fusion reactor in New York, John and Rodriguez were excitedly discussing the functions of their smart terminals. Suddenly, Penny timidly raised her hand and asked, "Can I ask a question?" What do you want to ask?" Both men turned to look at her simultaneously. "Isn't this a violation of human rights?" Penny muttered, feeling uneasy under their gaze. She felt that having every action monitored meant having no privacy whatsoever. Facing the still hesitant girl, Rodriguez smiled slightly and said, "This is a semi-feudal, semi-slave empire, and Homelander is the supreme emperor of this empire. In His Majesty's eyes, there should be no such thing as personal privacy. Now, the entire Earth Federation is prosperous like never before under His Majesty's rule. With powerful productivity, no one needs to worry about basic necessities like food, clothing, and shelter. But when people are well fed and clothed, they think of lust. There are always some villains, especially those D-class personnel, who might commit crimes with a suicidal mentality. And once everyone has a smart terminal, 99% of premeditated crimes will be eliminated, such as selling drugs, kidnapping, fraud, and so on. Isn't that good?" Rodriguez said righteously. This. Faced with Rodriguez's question, Penny subconsciously took a small step back. John coughed lightly, signaling him to tone it down. Rodriguez immediately realized he had gotten a little carried away and chuckled awkwardly. Recently, as vice president, her temper has risen a bit, much like her official position. She almost forgot that this little girl came with Homelander, and had no right to speak. This behavior was already somewhat presumptuous, and thankfully Homelander didn't get angry. What he said does make some sense, and the intelligent monitoring permissions are all automatically identified by AI, so there's no need to worry about information leaks, John explained from the side. Nothing is more important than life, is it? Penny nodded subconsciously, then felt that something was wrong, but couldn't quite put her finger on it. No investigation, no right to speak. If you think I haven't done a good job, you can go outside and observe the living conditions of ordinary people on this planet, and you will naturally be able to draw your own conclusions, John encouraged her. You're right. I'm also curious about the country under John's rule. Penny nodded. Shall I go take a look now? You can set off now, travel around, and return here in 7 days. I can send you back to your planet. John asked, when do you plan to leave? Let's leave now. Penny nodded slightly, and the next moment she was sent out the door, the spider mech from Washington also being sent to her side. This is. Penny looked down and a thick wad of banknotes appeared in her palm. John is so thoughtful, not only banknotes, but also a backpack on her back, containing identification documents and various props, even a fully charged cell phone that John had put in. This treatment was basically like a parent preparing snacks for a kindergarten child's field trip. Looking at the basket of props, the girl fell into a satisfied silence. After sending Penny away, John and Rodriguez continued their conversation. How are those D-class personnel who are learning magic doing now? John asked. John had previously memorized all the books in the Kamartaj library, which detailed the methods of using magic and the process of creating sling rings. However, since magic in Marvel isn't exactly benevolent, the energy used is all borrowed from dimensional demons. While this has the advantage of not having to worry about energy bars and having an almost inexhaustible supply, those dimensional demons aren't exactly benevolent. Most demons might directly track your location and destroy your world, and even the slightly better Vishanti need to pay a price for borrowing energy. Using a little at first is fine, but using too much will severely damage the body. Although John's physique means he won't experience any obvious side effects for at least tens of thousands of years, he still feels uneasy and doesn't really want to use it. But after ruling this world, John suddenly thought of those D-class personnel. Since these people have no human rights anyway, their deaths are just that, death. They can be used as human charging stations to accelerate the development of civilization. Subsequently, he gave some not too outlandish spells and the method of making sling rings to Jason and his team, letting them test them on slaves. There have been results. Among the 10,000 selected young and middle-aged D-rank personnel, several have already reached the point of being able to open special portals, but those few D-rank personnel who use magic are experiencing mild sleep disorders, and their physical condition is also clearly deteriorating. This may be related to the side effects His Majesty mentioned. After evaluation, if the high-intensity use of magic is not curbed, they will not live more than 10 years. That doesn't matter. If one batch dies, another batch will take its place. But absolutely do not let civilians come into contact with this cursed stuff, understand? John said. No problem, we understand. Rodriguez replied knowingly. Furthermore, we've already implanted time bombs in those magical slaves. If they dare to escape, and are out of contact for more than a minute within the allotted time, the bombs inside their hearts will explode. With the sacrifice of those magical slaves, we can then create large-scale permanent portals around the world to accelerate the flow of people, and then directly exploit the resources of other planets through these portals. As for the lizardman serum you gave us, Your Majesty, it's already in mass production. According to your wishes, it will be injected into every citizen of the Earth Federation as a form of public welfare, increasing the average lifespan to over 300 years. John listened and nodded slightly. Since they were working for him, he couldn't treat them unfairly. In 300 years, he should be able to develop a method for achieving immortality before the first batch of Earth Federation members all died. At that time, as long as they were members of the Earth Federation and obeyed the law, he would grant them immortality. Speed up the mass production of the lizard serum, and have your soldiers prepare. In a while, we'll be ready to enter a completely new world and be ready to liberate life on that Earth, John said. Yes, to be ruled by the Earth Federation is a blessing for that universe, Rodriguez said sincerely. Chapter 128 I command you to rule her planet. 7 days later, in a small village outside the main city of Honduras, a girl wearing a beret stood on a high-rise building, watching the villagers below go to the relief station to collect food. Since the Homelanders took control of the Earth, relief stations have been established in any human settlement with more than 1,000 people. Anyone who goes to the relief station and shows their good citizen certificate can receive enough food daily to sustain a normal life. These villagers aren't starving, they're just trying to get free food and take advantage of the government. Of course, asking for more is impossible, because John only wants to ensure their basic needs are met, not to let them lie around and become parasites. Citizens over 8 years old, unless intellectually or physically unable to work, are forced to attend 8 hours of compulsory education daily, regardless of subject, for self-study. Higher levels of citizen welfare are unlocked step by step. Currently, The most basic good citizen resources are this basic daily food, a monthly set of clothes, and free lodging, allowing these people to live a life of leisure. Once you have a job, your privileges will be elevated. For example, working in the Earth Federation for a year will qualify you as a level 2 citizen, granting you free lizard serum injections. The girl in the beret standing atop the high-rise was Penny, who had been preparing to tour the Earth Federation a few days prior. Initially, her impressions of developed countries like the United States weren't very noticeable. Aside from the Emperor, the lives of the residents seemed largely unchanged. However, after arriving in neighboring smaller countries, in those formerly underdeveloped regions, the changes became stark. Things were changing almost daily. Previously, she had only lived in the United States, so she had little understanding of the surrounding smaller countries. But upon arriving here, she was immediately stunned by the treacherous environment. She realized there were countries in the world with such dire circumstances. Gangs, drug trafficking, murder, rape, arms dealing. On her very first night in this country, she witnessed dozens of crimes taking place in the shadows, and according to those around her, this was a significant improvement compared to before the rule of her homeland. Just one night's experiences made the 14-year-old reconsider her previous thoughts. Indeed, compared to life itself, a little invasion of privacy wasn't so bad. But this was just the beginning. She soon witnessed what development truly meant. Honduras, due to its high crime rate, was chosen as a pilot city to begin issuing smart devices to everyone. Initially, there was considerable opposition. After all, this small country of tens of millions of people controlled 80% of the U.S. drug trade, and at least 1/10 of the population were involved in organized crime. If everyone were given a smart device, how would they make their money? So, at the behest of the underworld bosses, large crowds marched and demonstrated in the streets, attempting to stop or delay the pilot program. However, instead of news of a delay, after much passive resistance, the program caught the attention of idle citizens. Thus, under global scrutiny, John personally went to Honduras, and under the watchful eye of the vice president, who was sweating profusely, personally assassinated the incumbent president. He then stayed in Honduras for a day. On that day, the number of civilians in Honduras decreased by about 3%. For a small country with just over 10 million people, this meant an increase of 300,000 Class D personnel, making a significant contribution to the subsequent urbanization efforts. This also made Penny clearly understand how John obtained his identity as emperor. After John left, everyone in Honduras was wearing a smart terminal. As soon as the AI detected someone committing a crime, they would be electrocuted, almost eradicating 99% of premeditated crimes. Not only that, just a few days ago, the Earth Federation government announced that His Majesty's free open-source magical technology would drastically reduce the cost of large-scale transportation, and they were also considering developing a survival base on Mars this month. All of this made Penny admit that although John's actions were indeed a bit excessive, he was a savior for the common people. Looking at the satisfied smiles of everyone below, an idea welled up in Penny's heart. Perhaps I can. It's time. You can go back now. Just then, John suddenly appeared behind her and said calmly, "John, otherwise." Penny wanted to say something, but hesitated and didn't say it. "Never mind, it's nothing." Oh. John didn't mind, took her hand and returned to New York, where the space-time collider had been activated. As long as the girl entered, she could return to her own world. "This is for you." John looked at the girl beside him, still somewhat worried about her experiences after returning home, so he handed her what he was holding. "Use it here now. You're so small and weak, it might be dangerous for you to go back," John said, holding a lizardman serum with no side effects. "Thank you, John." Penny, moved, hugged him tightly as she looked at the green serum. Looking at the girl hugging him, John paused and suddenly said, "Never mind, I've changed my mind." "Huh? Since we're going to rule all the worlds anyway, let's start by ruling your world." "Ah." Penny was stunned. Actually, what she had hesitated about was whether John could also rule her planet. After all, John's rule was nominally a feudal empire, but it would still use the original government staff, and with a Homelander's deterrent, life would definitely be better for the common people. But the reason she hesitated was that John's methods were too radical. 1 million people would die at the very least, and she didn't want to bear that kind of pain. And now, John had actually suggested it before her. "Jason," John said calmly. "Yes, Your Majesty. I now order you to bring Penny's planet under the control of the Earth Federation. Ah. Jason's face stiffened, wondering if this was too much to ask. Although he had been injected with lizard serum, he was still no match for the future civilization. Don't worry, I'll help you, John said, taking a black substance from his right hand and throwing it at Jason. The next moment, Jason was enveloped by the substance. What is this feeling? A tremendous, overwhelming power surged through Jason's body. The expansion of his power made him feel like he could do whatever he wanted. Your Majesty, what is this? A hoarse voice came from Jason, who had now transformed into a 3-meter-tall monster covered in black slime. The venom suit, probably 5,000ths of my power, John said calmly. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 The Extinction of Humanity. 5,000ths? Jason stared in shock at his inhuman black body. This unprecedented power boost was only 5,000ths of His Majesty's strength. Oh, now it's only 9,000ths, John said calmly. In these 9 days, his strength had doubled again, reaching about 30 times what it was when he first arrived. And during the conversation, the 3 nuclear fusion reactors within his body naturally boosted his strength a little more. Sigh, even the manufacturing power of this poor Earth can't keep up with my growth in strength. This is also a problem, John thought to himself. Jason was now wearing the venom suit with 5,000ths of his combat power. His strength should be about 150 times what it was when he first obtained the Henry template, which is 150 million tons of force per arm. Although the venom suit didn't copy his biofield, heat vision, etc., so his combat power would be slightly weaker. Dealing with the opposing planet with his strength was already as easy as reading the palm of his hand. Your Majesty, I can't wait any longer. Jason felt the surging power and longed to unleash it immediately, but he dared not act rashly in front of Homelander, so he knelt down. Hey, John, shouldn't you ask for my opinion first? Penny tugged at John's sleeve, weakly protesting. By the way, remember not to cause too much destruction. Rule isn't about fighting and killing. Be gentle. John said considerately. Also, your suit has a weakness. It's vulnerable to high-frequency vibration noise and high temperatures. However, as long as you don't spend a few seconds in the extreme environment at the very center of a hydrogen bomb, there shouldn't be any problems. But remember to keep your actions there to a minimum, don't be too extreme, and submit an operation report to me when you return. Jason was unsure of what to feel when John told him not to be too extreme. Your Majesty, don't you know how extreme you were back then? In less than a week, at least tens of millions of people died at your hands. How can I compare to you in terms of extremes? After John finished speaking, he smiled at Penny and said, Don't worry, I guarantee the death toll won't exceed 100,000, and the home planet won't suffer too much damage. As soon as John finished speaking, Jason understood. So the budget for this operation is 100,000 people? That number is a bit tight for completing the domination mission. We really need to tone it down a bit. We can't go too far, so you can stay here for 3 more days. After 3 days, I'll give you a world where everyone is equal under my rule, John said softly. Then, Jason, standing beside him, consciously stepped into the spatial portal. After the time-space shift, as he stepped back onto solid ground, he was immediately horrified by the bloody scene before him. Before Jason was a silent dead zone, filled with destroyed ruins and rubble, with corpses lying in agonizing agony among the ruins. What's going on? Did His Majesty say this was just a future world without any special methods and where technology was almost stagnant? Did this happen after a nuclear war? Jason thought to himself, looking at the devastated city before him. Because the venom suit didn't inherit John's superpowers, he couldn't directly survey the entire city. He had to leap into the air and look down from above. From his vantage point, he discovered that the surrounding cities had been completely destroyed, leaving not a single intact building. He also saw numerous giants, ranging from several meters to tens of meters tall, gathered within the city. These giants had skin as dark as rock, their outstretched arms reaching their knees, and massive, bulging muscles. Their heads were bizarrely shaped, no two alike. High above, Jason surveyed the scene below. The situation was clearly wrong. If the portal hadn't disappeared after he entered, he would have wanted to return immediately. This is too bizarre. I should wait 3 days and have His Majesty come before making a decision, Jason thought to himself. But then his heart tightened, because the monsters below had discovered him. Boom! With a deafening roar, a creature 2 or 3 meters tall leaped into the air, its massive, fan-like hand reaching for Jason. The next instant, Jason, clad in his venom suit, pulverized it into a bloody pulp. But one was followed by a whole horde. In the chaotic air, giant after giant leaped up, lunging at Jason. Within a second, at least a dozen massive hands covered him, including a supergiant over 20 meters tall, whose strength was no less than Jason's, forcing him to flee in disarray. A few minutes later, drawn by the battle, 5 or 6 giants 20 or 30 meters tall arrived from nearby cities. Overwhelmed by their sheer numbers, Jason, newly donned the venom suit, was quickly subdued. What species are you? I never expected you could rival us, the leader, a monster over 20 meters tall, gruffly snarled. These monsters were also astonished by Jason's strength, having killed 5 or 6 of their cubs. That's what I want to ask you. Who the hell are you? Did I come to the wrong place? Jason was speechless, being grabbed by 2 monsters over 10 meters tall from behind like figurines. He had come here to bully the weak, but inexplicably all the weaklings had been stripped bare, and he was now being bullied. Luckily, he knew a little Japanese from his past as a special agent, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to understand what these people were saying. Us? In our original world, we were called subterranean by the humans on the surface. Our population increased, and we were originally planning to rule the land beneath our feet. However, most of us were inexplicably brought to this world. There are many humans on this planet too, but after 3 days of slaughter, this entire planet has been transformed into an environment suitable for us subterranean, the subterranean said. I didn't expect there to be such a powerful species as us on this planet. So, what race are you? I am an astronaut. I also plan to rule this planet. I'm just a sentinel on the front lines. After my leader arrives in a few days, you'll all be dead, Jason lied. He absolutely couldn't let these people know he was human, otherwise, once his venom suit was stripped off, he'd be dead without any use. Hearing Jason's words, the subterranean exchanged glances and finally decided to hand him over to their leader. Being held captive by these subterranean, Jason prayed in his heart, hoping only to survive until 3 days later. Chapter 130. The sky is 3 feet high, and the earth is 7/10 thin. 3 days later, John stood before the space-time collider as promised. Looking at the unknown space-time portal before him, John smiled and said to Penny, Jason should have already taken control of your Earth. Let's go take a look. Okay, Penny nodded, then took John's hand and stepped into the portal. But the next moment, to Dr. Octopus's astonishment, Penny, who had just stepped into the portal, was instantly pushed back. What happened? Where is His Majesty? Dr. Octopus hurriedly asked, then saw the words burned through by lasers on Penny's sleeve, reopen the space-time portal in 2 months. Looking at the words on her sleeve, both fell silent, filled with a bad premonition. They had never seen John so hurried, as if some terrifying enemy lurked on the other side of the portal. Something must have happened to my world, Penny exclaimed anxiously. She had come to understand John's strength these past few days, even John found it troublesome. She couldn't believe what had happened in her world. Regardless, His Majesty said 2 months, so let's wait quietly for 2 months. Dr. Octopus calmed down and said to the others, immediately seal off the news. His Majesty's orders are still being executed accurately. Also, arrange for the Vice President to speak with me immediately. On the other side, John sent Penny back before the time portal closed, then scanned his surroundings. Looking at the dark American night, the ravaged land, and the subterranean people wandering around, his surprise was no less than Jason's when he first arrived. Has this world become a dumping ground too? And what's been transported here this time? John looked at the hundreds of thousands of subterranean people in the entire continental United States. I didn't expect them to be the dream version of the subterranean people from One Punch Man. This really annoys me a bit, John said coldly, his eyes fixed on the humans who had been slaughtered across America. They've ruined the gift I carefully prepared. At this moment, a subterranean who happened to be nearby was surprised to see a well-dressed human swaggering around, surveying his surroundings. Humans. I never thought there were still humans alive, the subterranean man exclaimed in surprise. But the next moment, a tiny right hand, seemingly insignificant compared to his 20-meter height, gently touched his forehead before he could react. John had no intention of speaking, nor did he take any further action, for this was enough. Driven by extreme power and extreme speed, the air shattered layer by layer as John moved forward, creating a vacuum environment where no matter could fill the space he passed. For John, who was reacting at high speed while moving at breakneck speed, the surroundings were as calm as still water. But for the subterranean people throughout the city, an unprecedented shock and explosion was surging towards them. The air rushed outward at a speed of over 300 times Mach. The subterranean man who had spoken earlier didn't even have time to react before he was instantly squeezed and blown apart by the shockwave. The shattered fragments and limbs didn't even have time to bleed before they were crushed into lifeless dust by the terrifying storm. Not only the subterranean being, but the supersonic friction of the air subsequently generated a violent, intensely hot airflow. Unable to disperse in the confined space, this airflow, compressed to its extreme, produced an explosion no less powerful than a hydrogen bomb right before John's eyes. A mushroom cloud rose from the city, accompanied by a terrifying storm with wind speeds far exceeding EF5 in the short term. At that moment, the wind fanned the flames, and the fire was amplified by the wind. In just 20 seconds, Washington, beneath John's feet, was completely ravaged by the scorching storm. The remaining ruins were all swept up by the hurricane and lifted into the sky. At this moment, the sky was 3 feet high, and the ground was 7/10 of an inch below. John stood there, the raging wind and intense heat causing his clothes to flutter wildly. Looking at the tens of millions of subterranean beings lurking on this planet, and the utterly extinct humans, he decided to completely rebuild this ravaged planet and slaughter every single one of the subterranean beings without exception. What's going on? The enormous light shooting into the sky from Washington instantly alarmed all the subterranean inhabitants across the entire hemisphere. Some immediately sensed something was wrong and tried to investigate, but before they could even move, they saw the immense heat and light begin to move rapidly. Whoosh! A tiny figure swept past them at a speed of over 1,000 Mach. Following closely behind was a raging storm of dust clouds reaching the heavens and the temperature reaching tens of thousands of degrees Celsius. On average, every second, at least 10 areas the size of New York City were swept away by John's destructive storm. Most of the subterranean inhabitants affected didn't even see John before being swept away by the hurricane and torn to pieces by its relentless force. Only a few, those farther from the storm or 20 or 30 meters above the ground, escaped their fate of being pulverized. Even then, no subterranean could clearly describe what had happened. They only knew that death clung to them like the wind. 15 minutes later, the United States, with a land area of 9.37 million square meters, was completely devastated. Simultaneously, changes in airflow began to affect the environment of the entire hemisphere. Clearly, John's destructive effect was far more thorough than that of the subterranean people. Too slow. A mere raid would only kill about 20% of the subterranean people in the US. These guys are physically strong. We can't use the same methods we use on humans, John thought, frowning. Moreover, a significant portion of the subterranean people, as their name suggests, remained underground. Simply scraping the surface wouldn't be very effective. So you are the king of astronauts? Just as John paused to think, a 100-meter-tall subterranean king, his body inlaid with blue lines and wielding 4 glowing giant swords, emerged from the ground some distance away. At this moment, John appeared smaller than the king's eyes, exuding an overwhelming sense of oppression. But John didn't focus on the king's enormous size, he was merely slightly taken aback. What was this king of astronauts? My children are grateful for your care, the subterranean man said, brandishing his purple lightsaber from several kilometers away. 3 days ago, your outposts arrived on this planet and informed me that the astronaut leader would be visiting in a few days, the subterranean king said smugly, seeing John's stunned expression and assuming he had exposed John's identity. Jason, John murmured to himself. Then looked up at the subterranean before him. Don't you think you're talking a bit too much nonsense? What? The subterranean king asked, only to see John standing atop the ruins, his right foot lightly raised, then suddenly tapping the ground with his toe. The next moment, a massive rock, large enough to fit thousands of stadiums, was kicked up from the ground by John and slammed into the subterranean king at 10 times the speed of sound. Note, This is a setting based on a dream version of the subterranean race. Due to the poor portrayal in the anime, their strength was said to be between extremely weak and incredibly powerful. After all, in the dream sequence, Saitama went from being beaten and bleeding by the soldiers who destroyed the building to later fighting off the subterranean king, and only a little over 2 minutes passed. Clearly, Saitama's power level increased in the dream, not because the soldiers were particularly powerful. And logically, a group of guys who have lived underground for so long shouldn't have the strength to destroy a planet. Even if Saitama gradually regains his power in the dream, I've always felt that the subterranean king's ability in reality is to kill people in dreams. It's just that his first invasion failed because he encountered Saitama. Chapter 131 Piercing the Stars. As the earth trembled, the dragon of the earth churned. A colossal boulder, large enough to blot out the sky, sprang up under the pressure of John's right leg, crashing towards the underworld king like a planet. Staring at the seemingly soft yet physically unyielding soil before him, the underworld king gripped his crimson lightsabers in each of his forehands and slashed forward with ferocious force. Under the underworld king's terrifying power, the lightsabers, capable of cutting through anything, embedded themselves deeply into the rock. But they were immediately crushed backward by the massive clump of earth weighing hundreds of billions of tons. This is illogical. Even with the underworld king's current amateurish understanding of science, he frantically complained in his mind. Where's the pressure? Even a diamond would shatter. Physics doesn't exist. The underworld king struggled against the massive boulder, the terrifying force crushing his joints, barely managing to stop his retreat. Look up. At that moment, a cold voice came from above. Before the subterranean king could react, John floated above his head, raising his right hand high and slamming it down on the king's skull. With indescribable, terrifying force, the king was driven 100 miles into the earth by this punch. Like a depth charge, the solid ground began to ripple like ocean waves, the entire area the size of Japan trembling noticeably. Pain. Excruciating pain. Most of the king's skull fractured, fragments piercing his brain. Intense pain began to engulf his nerves, but before he could even howl, John was already deep underground, his right fist raised, ready to strike. Wait, I'll throw, the king hurriedly began, but what awaited him was John's merciless right fist. Boom. Ah. You. Boom. What do you want? Boom. Boom. John didn't want to waste words on a dead man, and continued to pound the king deeper and deeper into the earth with each punch. He only knew that as long as he threw enough punches, and with enough force, even the planet beneath his feet would submit to him. In the pitch black, John repeated his movements. After 10 punches, the underground king stopped struggling, seemingly dead. After 100 punches, the underground king's corpse had been reduced to mincemeat, but he was still throwing punches. After 1,000 punches, the surrounding gravity began to change, making it seem even more difficult for him to throw punches. After he threw his 1,827th punch, the surrounding darkness was instantly swept away, as if the heavens and earth had been cleaved open by his fists. Blinding light shone on him. John looked up, his face hard as iron, but he could hardly suppress his surging emotions. Just now, he had successfully pierced through a star with his own 2 hands. Beneath his feet was a huge passage several kilometers in diameter, connecting the 2 ends of the entire planet. At this moment, it was noon on the planet John was on, and the sun hung high in the sky. The warm sunlight was like a thin veil draped over John. Then, sunlight streamed through the straight hole beneath his feet, traveling over 12,400 kilometers before illuminating the other side of the earth. In the pitch-black night of America, it shone like a giant flashlight. John didn't stay in the air for long. He casually pulled a nuclear fusion reactor, shrunk by PIM particles, from his special ring, ignited it, and swallowed it. With his enhanced speed boost increased again, he looked at the subterranean people still present on this side of Earth and began his slaughter. 10 days later, John's supervision allowed him to see everything on Earth. After killing the last subterranean, John returned to America, looking at the 3-meter-tall black giant on the wasteland. "Your Majesty, are you done killing?" Jason asked, retracting his venom suit to reveal his true appearance. On the 4th day, John had conveniently rescued Jason from the subterranean people's prison. "Well, I've completely wiped out the subterranean people on this planet. However, the nuclear fusion reserves in my special ring are exhausted, and the space-time portal won't open for at least another month." John looked at the 3 nuclear fusion reactors remaining in his space. "Then, what do we do?" Jason asked blankly. He was just a roughneck. He was practically chosen as president on short notice. "It's all right. We just need to rebuild a production line in this month or so," John said calmly. John just wanted to talk to someone, and of course, he didn't expect any constructive answers. He just hoped the other person wouldn't pollute his intelligence. With his superbrain's intelligence, if he wanted to learn, he could read through any subject in a second. A month ago, back in the parallel universe, he had already had Dr. Octopus systematically collect knowledge from all subjects on Earth using pictures, text, and videos. After collecting it, Dr. Octopus displayed all this knowledge on a giant LCD panel several kilometers in size, playing it all at once at dozens of times the speed. After spending several days, John had thoroughly memorized the contents using only his brain power and eyesight, though he hadn't yet taken the time to understand them. It could be said that John's mind now contained detailed knowledge ranging from space-time collisions and the creation of Pym particles to postpartum care for sows. Since he was going to be on a planet with only 2 people for over a month, it would be a good opportunity to put his knowledge into practice. Meanwhile, Jason paused after hearing John's words, "Build a production line? But there are only the 2 of us here, relying on us." "Not relying on us, relying on me." John's tone carried a slight disdain for Jason's abilities, and he immediately began to act. With his supervision, he directly saw where the suitable ore was nearby, and then instantly arrived there. With a light touch of his fingertip, the ground cracked open, and thousands of tons of iron ore automatically jumped up from the ground. After 3 or 4 seconds of sorting, thermal vision restored it to crude iron, then refined it, and then artificially smelted it, creating a piece of pure iron weighing over 100 tons. John spent a few seconds recalling how the previous nuclear fusion reactor had been built, then immediately began shaping the iron in front of him into the desired form. Tools? No need. With superhuman vision, superhuman strength, and a biofield to control force and direction, the shape John shaped was only at the molecular level, far surpassing 99.99% of auxiliary tools. After shaping the iron, John went to find a copper ore deposit to smelt copper, in order to gather enough materials for the nuclear fusion reactor. Chapter 132 My World. Jason stared blankly at the factory that had risen from the ruins in minutes, speechless. He was at a loss for words when faced with the manufacturing capabilities of the Homelander. John's efficiency was equivalent to a professional team of tens of millions working day and night. It could be said that John was a civilization in himself. Jason only stared blankly for a moment before seeing the skeletons of houses begin to appear around the factory. What's going on? Wasn't this supposed to be a factory? Jason thought to himself. Actually, just now, John realized his productivity was overflowing. At the current construction speed, several nuclear reactor processing centers could be built in less than a day. So, since he had plenty of time, and was just passing the time anyway, it made sense to do some handicrafts to kill time, right? And that way, when his army came to collect the results, they'd have a place to stay, wouldn't they? John had already made plans. If Dr. Octopus didn't open the portal in a little over a month, he would spend a few days here building another one. In his mind, a city plan detailed down to the millimeter level emerged. This city he was about to build, from its sewage system to its nuclear power plant, had everything a normal city should and shouldn't have. He wanted to include everything. He estimated that once completed, it would be able to accommodate around 20 million people. Watching the city being built at the speed of light, Jason was filled with envy, wishing he could lend a hand. The venom suit John gave him only provided physical attributes, not a biofield or any other kind of cheat-like ability. John could build a city at 1,000 times the speed of sound without a ripple, while if Jason's speed exceeded Mach 1, it wouldn't be construction, it would be demolition. This was why John said he would build it alone, and he wouldn't even let Jason lend a hand. Soon, with something to do, time flew by. A little over a month later, as the agreed time approached, a super-metropolis capable of holding hundreds of millions of people stood tall on this planet. The reason it could accommodate 5 times more people than the initial 20 million was because John had forgotten about himself as a variable. During his 2 months in the other world, with an ample supply of nuclear reactors, his strength inadvertently increased by about 500 times. His body was now packed with nearly 3,000 nuclear fusion reactors. Initially, the reactors were the size of glass beads, but John noticed something was wrong when he ate about a dozen. If he continued swallowing them, his entire stomach would be filled. So, He spent some time solving this problem, building a laboratory to modify the PIM particle device. After a day or two of modifications, he successfully shrunk the reactors to the size of a cell nucleus, then used a biofield to forcibly insert the shrunken reactors into the cells. This way, unless all trillions of cells in his body were filled, there would be no shortage of PIM particles. Instead, the rate of nuclear fusion reactor production began to lag behind the rate of cellular digestion. On the last day before the agreed-upon deadline, John swallowed over 300 reactors in a single day. It's likely that before long, he'll be consuming not just one reactor, but a whole bunch of nuclear reactors. In the new metropolis, John, unusually, paused his work and lazily sat sideways on a sofa. He tossed his right hand aside, opened his mouth as if to swallow, and another reactor the size of a cell nucleus was swallowed. Beside him, Jason waited respectfully. In the past 2 months, he could clearly sense the changes in John's strength. At first, his eyes could barely keep up with John's speed, at least he could see John's afterimages. But gradually, when John was building, he could only sense John's movements within the area, his eyes couldn't keep up at all. Then, with a duong, houses sprang from the ground like magic. As for the process, he didn't know. Soon after, as the appointed time arrived, a stable purple portal appeared before them. One by one, John's confidants, including Dr. Octopus and Rodriguez, emerged from the portal, respectfully greeting John upon seeing him. A lovely-looking girl ran out from behind them. Her eyes lit up when she saw John on the sofa, and she rushed towards him, leaping into his arms. "I'm so glad you're all right," Penny said, burying her face in John's chest. "I'm sorry," John gently embraced the girl's soft body. "On your planet, humanity was slaughtered by other creatures. When I arrived, there wasn't a single person left." Penny's body stiffened halfway through John's sentence, but she showed no surprise, only understanding and sorrow. She had a bad feeling ever since John pushed her back from the time portal, and for 2 months she had predicted countless scenarios, and John had just mentioned the worst one. Penny didn't doubt John's words, she simply clutched his clothes and softly hummed in acknowledgement. "I've taken care of those murderers for you. The bodies are all piled outside. Do you want to see them?" John asked, but received only a silent shake of the head. Seeing that Penny was still so grief-stricken, John gently placed his hand on Penny's head and said, "Don't be sad. I'll definitely be able to resurrect them someday. You have to believe in my abilities." "Resurrect them?" Penny looked up, her face full of anticipation. "Of course, in return, in an equal exchange, what you need to do now is play a game with me." "I haven't played in a long time," John chuckled. "Okay, let's go play a game. I haven't played for 2 months either." Penny buried her sadness deep inside, wiped away her tears, and nodded vigorously. John ignored everyone else, took Penny's hand, and walked back to their original world. None of the people who remained behind were tactless enough to stop them. After John left, Rodriguez looked at Jason curiously and asked, "What's been going on here these past 2 months? And the city is so bustling, why is there no one here?" "Simply put, several races suddenly appeared and wiped out all the humans on Earth. I was captured too. Then His Majesty came and wiped out all the invasive species on the planet, completely reclaiming Earth, and then started rebuilding from scratch. The city you see now was built by His Majesty. Isn't that amazing?" The over 3-meter-tall Jason said boastfully, hands on his hips. Although he hadn't achieved any merit in this operation, he certainly deserved credit for his hard work. Chapter 133, Making Earth More Lively. In the main world, at Kamartaj, a grand memorial service was being held. Strange, now the new Sorcerer Supreme, and his disciples solemnly clasped their hands in prayer as they attended the funeral of their teacher, the Ancient One. Just yesterday, the Ancient One, against all odds and amidst strong protests from her disciples, bestowed the title of Sorcerer Supreme upon the newcomer, Strange, who had accomplished nothing. Then, after the coronation ceremony, the over 500-year-old former Sorcerer Supreme, due to her age and carelessness, accidentally fell down the stairs, landing headfirst and dying instantly before any rescue could be initiated. Startled by the suddenness of the event, all the disciples froze in place. Strange immediately tried to use the Time Stone, the relic he had just inherited, to save her. However, he unexpectedly discovered that the Time Stone had been enchanted by the Ancient One beforehand, requiring a 1-day cooldown before it could be used. Everyone then remembered that during the coronation ceremony, The Ancient One had said she was tired and wanted to rest, and that if anything happened, there should be no interference. So that's what rest meant. Gwen, Hellfire, and the others attended the Ancient One's funeral with a somewhat absurd feeling, their mood growing increasingly depressed. As of yesterday, in the past 2 months, at least half the life on this planet had been lost or missing. Because this planet was a high-risk area for otherworldly respawns, a total of 11 level 6, exploded cities, 5 level 7, exploded kingdoms, and 11 spatial portals appeared in those 2 months. In such a chaotic situation, the plight of Earth's native inhabitants was unimaginable. They could fall asleep at any moment, death arriving sooner than tomorrow. After a period of brutal, bloodthirsty fighting, the exhausted monsters finally decided to sit down and talk. After 3 days of negotiations, the entire Earth was divided into 4 large regions by the 11 spatial portals, each ruled by a level 7 monster, making life barely possible thereafter. Among these newly emerged powerful beings, there were certainly good ones, but the strongest had already been eliminated by the combined attacks of the other monsters, with only a few hiding in the shadows. At that very moment, an uninvited guest, encased in a spherical spacecraft, plunged into the atmosphere. Boom! After a violent tremor, the spacecraft crashed to the ground, creating a crater 20 to 30 meters in diameter. As the hatch opened, a robust man with waist-length hair and a tail emerged. "Earth? I'm back," Raditz said, each word distinct. Looking at the lush forest before him, Raditz waved his hand, releasing a white energy wave. In the blinding light, a forest the size of a city was instantly wiped away, leaving only barren land. Next, he activated a detector in his eyes and began to survey his surroundings. Quickly, based on the planet's gamma energy fluctuations, he pinpointed the location with the highest energy level and flew there. After half an hour of flight, Raditz spotted the life forms lurking in the ocean and dove in. He easily located the sky helicarrier hidden in the deep water. After John left, facing wave after wave of spawning high-level monsters, Nick Fury, realizing the gravity of the situation, conducted a major purge of Hydra members and immediately led his men to hide in the deep sea, barely surviving the 2+ months of disaster. However, their luck ran out. Detecting the underwater helicarrier, Raditz fired a key blast without hesitation. The immense power of the key blast created a hole the size of a person in front of the helicarrier. Under the water pressure, seawater immediately rushed in, and Raditz was sucked in along with the current. So easy? 3 minutes later, a large number of SHIELD agents had fallen around Raditz. Looking down at the space stone that had isolated them, they felt a sense of unreality. The defenses around such a treasure were incredibly weak. "I should complete Master's mission first, establish the space teleportation device," Raditz thought, then looked at the large group of scientists on the helicarrier. "Monkeys of Earth, I now demand that you immediately construct a device as I say to welcome Lord Thanos, or I will destroy this submarine immediately," Raditz said coldly, but his mind was already wandering to the Ancient One. According to Master's description, that female monkey was wearing the time stone back then. Wouldn't it be wonderful to steal it and present it to Master? Raditz thought to himself. Of course, this was just a thought. Having already been defeated by the Ancient One once, he ultimately decided to wait until Thanos arrived before joining forces to deal with her. In fact, Thanos was originally supposed to come with him, but it seems that news of other Infinity Stones suddenly appeared on some planet, so they decided to split up. Inside Kamartaj, just after the Ancient One's memorial service ended, Rodriguez's phone rang. After answering the phone, Nick Fury's serious voice came through. "Just now, the space stone was stolen from the helicarrier by a man with a tail. The researchers there reported that they're going to use it to open a space-time portal to the universe and send Thanos in. Tell the Ancient One immediately." Hearing Nick Fury's report, Rodriguez paused, then handed the phone to Strange, who was still in the meeting. "Sorcerer Supreme, here's your number. We might be in trouble." "What is it?" Strange asked. Rodriguez replied clearly. "Thanos' henchmen stole the space stone and are now preparing to open the spacecraft to come over." This time, not only Strange, but Gwen and the others who hadn't left yet also stopped and looked over. Since learning that their world was a story, they had all read at least dozens of Marvel comics, and were naturally familiar with Thanos, a mainstay of the Marvel Comics universe. "Did the Ancient One say anything before she left?" Rodriguez asked. "No, not only did she not leave a will, but she also sealed the time stone, forbidding us from saving her. As for the future, I know nothing about it without the time stone. Sturge shook his head. Hey, listen to me, since Thanos wants to use the space stone to come here, let's just stop him, Stark suddenly said. What do you mean? Everyone looked at him. It's simple. As long as we leak the space stone's power, those monsters who have divided Earth into different regions will smell the scent and come over, Stark shrugged. Anyway, Earth is already chaotic enough, making it even more chaotic won't hurt. Chapter 134 Invading Reality. Everyone hesitated at Stark's suggestion. Upon closer examination, it seemed reasonable. The space stone was already out of their hands, and things were already bad enough. How much worse could it get? Whether the space stone fell into Thanos' hands, or rather, into Shendu's, the final outcome wouldn't be much different. That makes sense. I'll spread the message right away. Nick Fury nodded, accepting Stark's suggestion. Seeing that he wouldn't get much of the information or help he wanted here, he hung up. 10 minutes later, in a grand hall made of stone pillars, Shendu turned to his trembling subordinate. You said that one of the original sources of this universe, the stone representing the power of space, is now on Earth, and that guy is preparing to use the stone's power to send someone from another universe here. Shendu squinted at his servant. Yes, Master, this news has spread throughout Earth, and the rulers of other regions have also received the news. The servant prostrated himself on the ground. Shendu closed his eyes and concentrated for a moment, feeling that this news might be a trap, but ultimately decided to go anyway. The current situation on Earth is extremely delicate. Nominally, people from all regions have agreed to a truce, but even Borwas, a martial arts fanatic, knows this is only a temporary compromise. With overwhelming power, this awkward balance will soon be broken, and the gem representing the power of the universe's birth might be the key to disrupting that equilibrium. Even knowing something fishy is going on, he has to get involved in something this important. After all, with his current strength, this world lacks righteous magic. He can simply use brute force to break any trickery. Thinking this, the Holy Lord looked at his subordinate and asked, "Where's the gem located?" "Near the Atlantic Ocean." "Here are the detailed coordinates." The servant handed over the equipment. The Holy Lord's eyes narrowed. He felt it was more likely a trap. On the other side, Borwas, the ruler of another region, clad in gilded armor, glared at his subordinates with one eye, beaming with delight. "You said there's a powerful gem, and those guys from the Holy Lord are planning to steal it? Good, good. They usually avoid me, afraid of being ambushed after being injured in battle. Now they can't hide anymore, can they? Report the location of that gem to me immediately. Once I get it, I'll take on all three of them at once." Borwas grinned from ear to ear, while his kneeling servants secretly groaned. Compared to the Holy Lord, Borwas, despite his seemingly amiable demeanor, completely disregarded the lives of his subordinates. Other monsters, when fighting, consider these people as their future assets, preferring not to kill them for sustainable future exploitation. But Borwas, once a battle broke out, disregarded the environment and his subordinates. Of the half of humanity wiped out globally, the highest percentage died at his hands. Within 2 months, he had wiped out several batches of his servants. Even the most ruthless harvesters wouldn't dare to do that. With the arrival of Raditz, the entire situation on Earth underwent a dramatic change. What these people didn't anticipate was that as they began to stir, an even larger deep-sea behemoth would unleash even greater cataclysmic waves. In a parallel universe, after finishing his game with Penny, John watched her sleep peacefully with a smile on her face and returned to the space-time collider. Dr. Octopus and Jason, among others, had been waiting there for some time. "Open the space-time portal immediately. Take 100,000 troops with me first. Too many, and I fear I cannot protect you all," John said, his hands behind his back. Rodriguez and the others twitched at the corners of their mouths, feeling utterly ashamed. It was like in chess, where other pieces desperately protect the king and general, but here, it was the other way around. Upon receiving the order, Dr. Octopus immediately instructed the researchers to open the space-time portal. As the collider started, with the immense energy supply from the nuclear fusion reactor, the beams from the two colliders collided, forming a giant space-time portal with sides 1 kilometer long. On the other side of the portal lay the universe where John and Gwen resided. "Let's go," John said, waving gently forward. Instantly, 100,000 soldiers, equipped with time-space stabilizers developed by Dr. Octopus and injected with lizard serum, marched towards the portal. Meanwhile, In the ruins of New York City, one well-trained soldier after another emerged from the portal, momentarily stunned by the surrounding rubble. Then, their training kicked in, and they immediately began constructing defenses on their home planet, simultaneously hacking into the planet's electronic signals to investigate the situation. John, leaning against a throne, his right hand supporting his head, was carried through the portal like a constellation of solemn-faced soldiers. Back in his home world, John's expression paused briefly before quickly returning to normal. Through an instant global scan, he knew better than anyone else the current state of affairs facing this planet. Lord Saint. Boros. Raditz, what a hodgepodge. John leaned back on the throne, utterly languid, showing little interest whatsoever, including in the passing of the Ancient One. After all, those who shouldn't have died, the Ancient One had indeed kept her promise and protected them all. Your Majesty, the network of this world has been completely hacked. Should we announce our existence directly to the entire world next? A white soldier stepped forward and asked. His face was filled with fanaticism as he looked at Homelander, as if he were looking at his god. Hack it. John nodded succinctly. Yes, sir. The soldier accepted the order, and quickly, commands were issued one after another. Under the overwhelming force of technology, the world's electronic signals were immediately controlled. Subsequently, whether it was mobile phones, computers, televisions, or radios, any device connected to the internet was subjected to live broadcasting. Meanwhile, in Stark's private room at Kamartaj, Jarvis's voice broke in his ears. Sir, the signal is being rapidly hacked. My current version is unable to withstand it. What? Stark froze, then the voice in his ears immediately changed to a serious male voice. Humans of this planet, we are members of the Earth Federation from a parallel universe. We are about to liberate your planet. Please immediately pick up your connected phones and computers and listen to this sacred voice. This voice was repeated not only in Stark's ears but also on his phones, computers, and radios. What the hell? What has changed on Earth this time? Stark cursed, then heard the male voice continue. Now, please listen carefully to the words of His Majesty, the Great Emperor of the Earth Federation. Homelander, John Kent. Chapter 135 Acquaintances and Meetings. Homelander. John Kent. Hearing the name announced on the radio, Stark's impending curse caught in his throat. Almost instantly, he pulled out his phone, and on the screen, the boy leaning against the throne, was none other than Homelander, who had disappeared for over 2 months. After playing around for so long, he's finally back. Hellfire Blizzard also looked at the screen and sneered, a sigh of relief escaping her lips. This was the sentiment of most people in Kamartaj. Meanwhile, half of humanity still alive on Earth stared blankly at the boy on their phones. Although only 2 months had passed, in these days of torment, it felt like 20 years had gone by, and the name Homelander felt somewhat foreign to them. Facing this global address, John remained nonchalant, not even bothering to straighten his posture. That's right, I'm Homelander. It's been 2 months, and I didn't expect half of humanity to still be alive. Looks like your vitality is quite tenacious. Anyway, for the past 2 months I've been building an empire in a parallel universe, and I'm back to rule you. I will bring the entire Earth under my control, and most people can choose to join the Earth Federation voluntarily. However, this is a one-time opportunity. Those who refuse will permanently lose their citizenship and human rights. As for those who have previously insulted me online, they will be forcibly incorporated into the Earth Federation, serving me as slaves for life. That's about it. John spoke casually to the camera, not soliciting, but announcing. However, John's announcement received little reaction online. After all, the situation on Earth was no longer as simple as it was 2 months ago. Most people didn't believe Homelander possessed the power to crush everything. At most, Earth had just gained another partition after the war. John didn't expect these people to be foolish enough to believe him. Once he dealt with the others, they would naturally join him obediently. After the speech ended and the live stream was shut down, a portal sparkling with electricity appeared before John. Strange and the others, having watched the live stream, immediately brought Gwen and the others back. But as soon as they appeared, they were surrounded by soldiers. These soldiers glared at men and women who had suddenly appeared with hostility. Who are you? State your identities and purpose in this world. If you refuse to cooperate, we will attack immediately, a sergeant shouted a warning to the group. We are Johns. Stark tried to speak but was immediately interrupted by the sergeant. How dare you address His Majesty by his name so casually? The sergeant glared at Stark and roared, feeling that this man was offending the Emperor. As John spent 2 months in the parallel universe, every aspect of Earth there was completely transformed from top to bottom. Everyone below John was equal. There was no crime, intelligent terminals ensured no oppression, everyone had food to eat, there were no empty promises, and hard work was rewarded. And joining the army comes with the immense power granted by the lizard serum and a lifespan of 300 years. These were things they never dared to dream of before, yet they obtained them so easily in just 2 months, and they were certain they would receive even more in the future. This led to a complete 180-degree reversal in John's reputation in the parallel world, from a tyrant to someone who now willingly calls him His Majesty. It's all right. At this moment, John appeared behind the sergeant and gently patted his shoulder, saying, "These guys are acquaintances of mine. You can go patrol other areas first." "Yes, Your Majesty." The sergeant looked at Homerman with fervent eyes, feeling the touch of John's pat on his shoulder, and decided to enshrine this uniform from now on. After the soldiers left, John turned to Strange and said, "I didn't expect you to come out so early." The powerful Ancient One died from falling down the stairs. It's hilarious. Strange also smiled wryly. He had been suddenly appointed the Sorcerer Supreme by the Ancient One, and then she just dropped the ball and left. Now all his disciples were watching him, and the pressure was immense. "Your Majesty, no, I've been waiting for you for over 2 months." At this moment, Rodriguez from the native world stepped forward, looking at John with teary eyes, and said, "These past 2 months, America has been annihilated in the resistance, and President Ellis died at the hands of those monsters. Fortunately, it was thanks to your protection that I survived." As he spoke, Rodriguez actually managed to squeeze out some tears. All right, let me introduce you to someone here," John said helplessly, then waved to someone in the distance, saying, "Rodriguez, come here for a moment." "I'm right here, why does Your Majesty call me?" Rodriguez was surprised, then heard a young man in the distance call out, trotting over and saying, "Your Majesty, what are your orders?" "Let me introduce you, you two are both called Rodriguez. This is the Vice President of the Earth Federation," John said, pointing to the former reporter, Rodriguez. "Native Rodriguez, I've become a substitute, parallel Rodriguez, so I'm the substitute, he doesn't have a position right now. You, arrange a position at the same level for him. You know what I mean, right?" John said, looking at Paralleluo. Understood, Paralleluo nodded repeatedly, looking at the old man in his 40s or 50s in front of him, already understanding. No wonder His Majesty made him vice president the moment he saw him, it was all thanks to this old lamp in front of him. "Paralleluo, just you wait, you old codger, the title of His Majesty's #1 lackey will definitely be mine. Paralleluo, young man, you're still too young. His Majesty still needs me by his side." The two looked at each other, smiles on their faces, but both knew how much hostility the other harbored. After arranging things for Rodriguez, Stark finally couldn't help but say, "John, you now." "Hey, don't call me that so intimately." John waved his hand to stop him, then said coldly, "I'll handle those things, I don't need you to remind me." Then John looked at Hellish Blizzard, who was standing to the side with her hands on her chest, waiting for him to notice her. He stepped forward and gently put his arm around her slender waist, whispering near her rosy earlobe, "Save me a room tonight, and remember to call Betty and the others." After saying that, John looked at Blizzard's taut but flushed face, then turned to Hungra and said, "Remember to get them all a good citizen certificate right now, with higher authority. You don't need to worry about the rest." "Yes, Your Majesty," Hungra replied respectfully. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Rebellion and Crushing. After casually assigning these people some tasks, John ignored them. Scanning the globe with his supervision, he discovered that the leaders of the 4 major regions were all heading towards the Atlantic. Preparing to summon Thanos with the Space Stone? Interesting. John's lips curled slightly. Too lazy to fly over, he told the officer beside him, "Summon 2 magical slaves and open a portal to the Atlantic. I need to go." A minute later, a magical slave wearing a collar arrived. He was supposed to obey orders and open a portal, But he didn't. Instead, seizing this rare opportunity in front of John, ignoring the surrounding soldiers, he knelt down in terror, kowtowing repeatedly, "Your Majesty, spare me. Your Majesty, spare me. I know I was wrong. I will never dare to speak ill of you online again. Please give me another chance." John sat on his throne, his brow furrowed slightly, looking somewhat displeased at the officer who had brought a magical slave over. "Damn it, how dare you make a fool of yourself in front of His Majesty?" The officer felt his dignity had been humiliated by this scene. He kicked the slave to the ground, then pulled him up and forced him to kneel before John, saying, "Your Majesty, please forgive me. It was my fault for failing to discipline this slave properly," allowing him to take advantage of the situation. John waved his hand impatiently. Although he didn't speak, the officer, understanding the meaning, immediately dragged the audacious magical slave away in fear and anger. Although not explicitly stated, the final outcome was clear: the officer would be suspended without pay for 3 months and demoted 1 rank for poor discipline, while the magical slave, who had no human rights and had offended the emperor, would be dragged back to the parallel world to find out all those involved in the incident, and ultimately executed. 2 minutes later, a new magical slave appeared before John. This slave was much more obedient, not uttering a word, but simply drawing a portal based on the given address. Raditz, who was on the beach having his men set up a teleportation device, watched in disbelief as an enormous portal appeared beside him. Seeing the orange portal sent him into PTSD. He thought the Ancient One was about to arrive, but to his surprise, it was a strange young man coming from there. "It's all right, let them continue, I won't stop you," John said calmly, waiting for Thanos to arrive so they could deal with him together. But Raditz wasn't about to accept that, and was about to kill John with a ki blast. The next second, the ki blast, along with his hand, was shoved into his mouth, followed by a blinding light shining from the gap in his mouth. Boom! Raditz's eyes widened, feeling a burning pain in his throat. When did this happen? What just happened? Raditz was incredibly shocked, having no idea how John had done it. If the ki blast hadn't been just a probing attack, and if he hadn't protected his body with his ki in time, it would have pierced his head. "I advise you to obediently teleport your master here. If you offend me again, it won't be so easy to resolve," John said calmly, looking into Raditz's deep blue eyes, which were being corrupted by the Mind Stone. His strength was increasing every moment, already more than 20,000 times stronger than when he first entered the parallel universe. If he wanted, he could lift the entire city of New York with one arm. And a casual flick of his finger could unleash the power of a surface-level apocalyptic meteorite. He could kill as many of these melee mages who relied on ki to enhance their bodies as they came. Raditz stared intently at the boy before him, pulling his right hand out of his mouth, his vigilance at its peak. "What do you want?" Raditz asked in a hoarse voice, but only received cold stares from John. "The weak don't need to know so much, just complete your mission," John said with a hint of disdain, then found a seat and sat down quietly, waiting. Raditz gritted his teeth, finally falling silent, thinking to himself, "Wait until Master comes, you'll be sorry." Before long, before Raditz's expert team had even finished constructing the space-time portal, the District 4 lords, following Tony's suggested plan, arrived, drawn by the scent of the approaching forces. The first to arrive at the scene was a sinister-looking young man dressed in a Taoist robe, with a string of skulls on his wrist and a whisk in his right hand. He was currently riding a flying sword at several times the speed of sound, his eyes lighting up when he saw the teleportation device that the research team beside Raditz was about to complete, and he immediately flew towards them on his sword. John, knowing the newcomer meant trouble, didn't bother with words and flicked his finger at several thousand times the speed of sound. In an instant, a super-powerful energy blast, several kilometers in diameter and visible to the naked eye, shot out, engulfing the skull-wearing youth. The powerful shockwave propelled him backward. Right in the path of the super-powerful energy blast was a small, uninhabited island several thousand square kilometers in size. The terrifying shockwave directly crushed the mangled youth, pushing him backward without being hindered by the island, blasting it apart, and then continuing its backward march with the remaining force. The aura spread for dozens of kilometers before gradually dissipating, and the skeletal youth who had occupied a large area had turned into a cloud of blood mist, leaving no trace of his body. "Tisk, it feels like I have to do everything, my prestige is being lowered." After casually killing this so-called one of the 4 district rulers, John muttered to himself, Even if Jason wore the venom suit, he wouldn't be strong enough. I might as well recruit a few more capable dogs. Raditz. Witnessing the terrifying aura, cold sweat dripped down Raditz's forehead. Looking at the boy's slender figure, he felt that the other party was exuding an unparalleled aura. Damn it, I absolutely can't let Master come over, or everyone will die. Raditz finally realized the seriousness of the problem. With a willingness to die together with others, Raditz suddenly raised his right hand, and the full-power aura cannon was fiercely fired at the researchers assembling the equipment. But in the instant it was fired, John was already standing in front of him, and with a light press, he directly extinguished the aura cannon. Why are you so disobedient? John said, gently ripping Raditz's right arm off, blood gushing out instantly. Raditz screamed, clutching his wound and staggering back several steps before collapsing to his knees. Oh, the space portal is complete. John looked at the newly constructed portal before him. Open it now. The sooner we finish, the sooner I can go home. No. Raditz tried to say something. But the next moment John stomped his entire head into the ground. Chapter 137 Large-Scale Job Fair. John sat directly on Raditz's back, which was covered by long hair, and gestured to the researchers to quickly open the portal, urging them not to be ungrateful. Yes, yes, the researchers nodded repeatedly, then opened the special portal in their hands without hesitation. The next moment, a beam of light struck the tesseract, and under the stimulation of the energy, the gems activated, creating a deep blue space-time portal several kilometers long above. At the other end, Thanos wore the Infinity Gauntlet on his right hand, with the power and mind stones embedded in the 6 slots on the gauntlet. Looking at the open special portal before him, Thanos nodded and said, "It seems Raditz has obtained the Space Stone. Everyone, invade Earth with me." With Thanos's order, the Chitauri army and all sorts of subordinates behind him, numbering at least tens of millions, roared and surged into the special portal. Thanos entered the special portal surrounded by his subordinates, but as soon as he entered, he saw a human sitting quietly on the back of one of his generals. At this moment, facing millions of troops, this human's expression remained completely calm and undisturbed. Raditz struggled to lift his HUD from the ground, his face covered in dust, a tooth missing from his once neat set. He reached out with his remaining left hand towards Thanos, crying out pitifully, "Run! Master! Get off Earth! This is a trap! We can't beat him!" But before he could finish, John, finding it noisy, casually twisted Raditz's head off and tossed it aside. Seeing that the army had mostly arrived, he slowly walked to the teleportation device and kicked it, shattering the entire structure. Behind Thanos, the special tunnels stretching for kilometers closed due to the device's destruction. A mysterious silence fell over the scene. Thanos and his men stared in astonishment at John, who had ignored them. They knew Raditz's strength all too well. Even Thanos, unarmed, was no match for Raditz. And yet, this young man had simply twisted Raditz's head off. John looked at Thanos and said, "Your strength is not bad, I admire you. Be my dog." "Human, you are too arrogant," Thanos said coldly, but the next moment, the human bent down and picked up the space stone from the ground with his bare hands. Using the power of the space stone in his hand, plus his supervision to lock the position of every monster on the planet beneath his feet, John immediately cast a massive special spell. In an instant, not only tens of millions of soldiers brought by Thanos, but also millions of deep blue smoke billowed from the surroundings. From these smokes of various sizes emerged one after another creature, some human and some beast. The smoke formed by the space stone around him made Thanos feel extremely troubled. He thought they were all the human subordinates and began to regret his hasty attack on Earth. Where is this? Shendu looked at the changing environment in astonishment. Could it be that the treasure representing special power has been taken away? So many opponents, it seems we can have a good fight. Emerging from the smoke and looking at the monsters around him, Baros's blood boiled. Is this your army? Thanos looked at John coldly, while clenching his fist, the power of the stone ready to be unleashed. To correct you, I should say these might be my future war dogs, John said calmly. But that depends on whether you survive my attacks. John scanned the various creatures present. Among them were humans, beasts, and even silicon-based lifeforms. A significant portion of them were mindless wild beasts, these delusional beings creating an incredibly noisy environment, even attacking those around them, making it impossible for others to hear themselves. Therefore, before recruiting these creatures as his war dogs, he needed to screen some out. His right hand vanished for a moment, and the next instant, millions of thumb-sized bursts of energy completely crushed the still clamoring monsters. The effect was immediate. Seeing the bursts of blood, the air instantly fell into a cold, deathly silence. Everyone, drenched in sweat, stared at the boy at the center of the energy bursts. I can't see him at all. This kind of strength. Boros clenched his right hand, staring at the boy, feeling his blood boiling. He's so much faster than me, even with a rabbit talisman. Has another powerful figure appeared? Shendu's eyes narrowed slightly. Thanos' infinity gauntlet, the purple light representing the Power Stone, shone brightly, forming a pure, hard protective shield around his body. His eyes looked at the terrifying human before him with extreme fear. Seeing that the atmosphere had finally quieted down, John was finally able to speak. Originally, all of you scum were going to die, but I just happened to need a batch of obedient war dogs, so I'm giving you a chance to live. For the next 2 minutes, I will just stand here and will not attack you. If you can survive these 2 minutes, you will be qualified to be my dogs. I can accept scum as war dogs, but I don't accept trash. Weakness is your cause of death? John said calmly, his voice resounding throughout the entire scene. Throughout the entire conversation, no one interrupted, because anyone who tried to interrupt him or attempt to escape had already had their head twisted off by him with lightning speed. In just a few words, tens of thousands more heads rolled on the scene, terrifying those around them who dared not move. As for the content of John's words, it only left those around bewildered. What strange conditions were these? Without launching an attack within 2 minutes, how could they possibly survive? Were they going to kill each other? Ignoring their confusion, John began a countdown after speaking. As the countdown began, the biofield that usually covered his body was gently withdrawn, and he stood there with his arms crossed. Boros and Thanos were the first to notice something was wrong. These two armored figures felt a powerful pull coming from John, trying to drag them towards the humans. What's going on? Thanos immediately clenched his fist, the Power Stone surging as he forcibly stopped the pull on the humans, but countless pieces of metal around him were already being lifted up, flying towards John at supersonic speed. Throughout the entire process, John did not make any movement. He simply withdrew the biofield, allowing the more than 3,000 nuclear fusion reactors that were usually suppressed in his stomach to generate power on their own. Chapter 138 Inviting someone to a banquet for beheading, and then... The nuclear fusion reactor in John's stomach wasn't the perfect version. Instead, it was a runaway version, similar to those in Spider-Man 2, that, once activated, could destroy an entire city. Each reactor, once activated, would unleash a terrifying magnetic force that would pull all the metal objects in the city towards it. John currently had over 3,000 of these stomach reactors. Normally, to avoid causing too much damage to the surrounding environment and to maintain normal conversation, John would consciously use a biofield to restrain these terrifying devices that constantly emitted light and heat. But today, John withdrew the biofield control, letting the reactors run rampant. Instantly, all metal objects within a radius of hundreds of kilometers centered on his location were attracted by the powerful magnetic force and flew towards him. Whoosh! Boom! Crash! The first to be affected were the millions of lives here. Their weapons, armor, vehicles, and accessories, anything magnetic, were torn apart at supersonic speeds, piercing through any obstacles in their path. In just an instant, at least 1 million lives were swept away and killed by this metal storm. Thanos, holding the Power Stone and feeling the immense force of tens of millions of tons, decisively ripped off his armor, letting it be pulled towards John by the magnetic force. At this moment, without the influence of the biofield, John seemed to have transformed into a humanoid star, or a black hole, as if capable of devouring everything around him. Thousands of reactors simultaneously ignited, spewing heat outwards, raising the temperature within a meter of him to 4 or 5 million degrees Celsius. The metal containers vaporized before they even touched his body, then enveloped John like stars surrounding the moon. In just a few seconds, a huge metal sphere with a diameter of over 10 meters formed around John. I don't have any metal on me. The Holy Lord, wearing only a pair of shorts, chuckled smugly. He then turned and saw a Chitauri mothership, hundreds of meters long, being magnetically attracted and slamming into him. Roar! The Holy Lord roared, raising his hand and punching forward with tremendous force. The combined power of the rabbit and ox runes cleaved the Chitauri mothership, which was hurtling towards him at supersonic speed, in two. But before he could relax, his crimson pupils constricted sharply. Several kilometers away, the coastal city that had been reduced to ruins by the battle had risen from the ground. Buildings, houses, cars, yachts, all were being swept along in this torrent of metal. Boom 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 boom. Continuous bombardment came from behind. The survivors knew it was the terrifying destruction caused by metal objects constantly crashing into the metal sphere. Every moment, people were dying in the overwhelming storm of metal. As John said, he could accept scum, but he would never accept trash. The weak wouldn't even have the chance to stand before him. 2 minutes later, John recoded his biofield, then gently tore the 1,000-meter-long metal sphere in front of him apart, and looked at the survivors with satisfaction. In those 2 minutes, everyone below level 5 had been reduced to mincemeat by the metal's bombardment. Even those at level 5, whose spellcasting had a cast time, would be completely torn apart in this metal storm. Of the millions of lives scattered across Earth, only 32 remained alive. Thanos' millions of soldiers were all dead, leaving only Thanos standing awkwardly in place. Very good, your strength has reached the minimum standard I approve of. Now I allow you all to become my dogs, and then. John said calmly, arms crossed. A very strong man raised his hand and said, if I don't agree. Boom. Silence. Everyone stared at the man who had raised his hand to speak. The man's entire body above the neck had completely disappeared, and most of his raised right hand had also vanished. Beside John, half of the kilometer-long metal sphere that had just been torn apart disappeared. It seemed to have been thrown out at incredible speed, shattering the man's head before piercing the atmosphere along the horizon and soaring into space. They recognized the man who had been killed. He was none other than the ruler of one of the war zones. The original 4 kings of the war zone had been reduced to a pair of black and white monsters by this human in a single day. I don't like people interrupting me while I'm speaking, remember that? Seeing the cold sweat dripping down their faces, John raised a finger to emphasize. Now, you can make your requests or ask your questions, and I can grant or answer them as appropriate. John looked at the crowd. Boa stepped forward without hesitation, his body at its peak condition, staring at John with burning passion, saying, defeat me, and I'll become your hand. Boom, 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 boom. Before Boros could finish speaking, John shattered his body, then shattered it again after it healed, destroying his body 5 times in 3 seconds. Satisfied? John stood before Boros's newly healed body, speaking calmly. I submit, Boros gasped, the repeated full body healing having consumed half its energy. Even more terrifying was that it hadn't seen the human before it, how its master had attacked. It was clearly a crushing defeat. And you? John asked, looking at Shendu. I have no objections, Shendu replied without hesitation, sliding to his knees. His years in hell had taught him one thing, if you can't win, hide, you can always rebel later. John nodded calmly, turning to Thanos beside him. Be my dog. I can create a perpetual motion machine. Huh? Thanos' eyes widened in disbelief. A perpetual motion machine. Aren't you worried about the universe's resources? You work for me first, and in a few years I'll create a perpetual motion machine for you. That's much more reliable than trying to wipe out half the universe's life. John looked at Thanos. This guy, like himself, believed in equality, but unfortunately, he wasn't very bright, only thinking about killing. This. Thanos fell silent. He had originally intended to remain defiant to the death, but he had promised to show him a perpetual motion machine. Or rather, you want to try your luck with this one last time, John said, raising his right hand. The 2 gems that had been embedded in Thanos' infinity gauntlet had somehow ended up in his hand. The destructive power of the Power Stone traveled through John's arm, forming tiny cracks at the point of contact, but these were quickly healed by the energy from the nuclear fusion reactor. As for the Mind Stone, John encased it in a medium, not intending to test whether the stone would affect him. Chapter 139 Mutual Removal of Personnel Registrations. After being coerced and bribed by John, and having his 2 prized Infinity Stones stolen, Thanos had no choice but to reluctantly agree, maintaining his composure. Alright, since you have no objections, I'll give you some time to consolidate your forces and then join my Earth Federation, John said. Earth Federation? Shendu and Boros asked doubtfully. Because John had acted so quickly, They had assumed this guy had also been transported from another world. Yes, one of my forces, John said calmly. You'd better familiarize yourselves with the Earth Federation's legal code. Don't kill or break a law indiscriminately, or don't blame me for not warning you when I kill you. Shendu and Boros exchanged a glance. Finding their new superior's behavior rather strange, he actually wanted them to obey the law. One of them was a demon, the other a cosmic emperor. When had they ever obeyed the law? Given their past actions, they would have been executed 1,000 times over by now. Hearing this suddenly was simply too novel. After giving them brief instructions, John waved his hand, and a magical tunnel appeared. Let's go, he said, I'll introduce you to your new subordinates. He then led the way, and the 30-odd men exchanged glances before obediently following. Your Majesty, you're back, Parallel Law and Native Law said simultaneously, one on each side. Yes, I've just cleared out all the monsters on Earth and gained a few new, quite capable subordinates. You guys hand over the reins to them, establish control over this planet, then some of you go to those spatial portals and conquer the planets on the other side, while the rest of you go with Thanos to conquer the races in the universe, John instructed. Thanos! Native Law exclaimed, his eyes wide. Yes, he's your colleague now, John said, pointing with his thumb to the purple-haired man who had walked in from behind the portal. Remember to explain the federal laws to your new colleague. John then vanished. It really is Thanos, and those two are Boros and Shendu. The native Rodriguez looked at the guys walking out of the portal, astonished. The guys who had plagued Earth for 2 months had been dealt with so easily. But Rodriguez from the parallel world didn't care. In his view, with Homelander involved, nothing was insurmountable. So he naturally went up to these strangely looking guys and greeted them. Hello, I am Rodriguez, the Vice President of the Earth Federation. His Majesty just told me that we should all serve His Majesty well in the Earth Federation from now on. Seeing the parallel Rodriguez extend his thin, stick-like hand to them so generously, these former bullies suppressed their strange feelings and shook hands with him one by one. Very good, now that's a basic introduction. Next, I'm going to explain the Federation law to you properly, the parallel Rodriguez said seriously. The most important article of the entire federal law is that His Majesty has the final say on the interpretation of the law, and all federal residents must strictly obey His Majesty's orders. Even if His Majesty wants us to commit suicide, we must do it. Parallel Luo's expression was extremely serious, and the Holy Lord and the others nodded silently. It's the law of the jungle. The powerful have the right to make rules at will, which is normal. Then there's the current version of the federal law, which states that every federal civilian is equal in terms of human dignity. And all are His Majesty's loyal lambs. Therefore, there should be no unnecessary infighting among fellow lambs. Then, what are those over there? The Holy Lord pointed to the slaves chained by collars. Are they civilians too? Oh, slaves aren't considered people. Some of these guys have insulted His Majesty, and the others are unprotected individuals who refuse to join the Empire. Parallel Luo explained. Refusing to join the Empire also makes you a slave? Thanos asked. Theoretically, no, but according to federal law, non-imperial citizens are not protected by imperial law. Since these people are unwilling to join, they are all heretics, and no treatment is too harsh. Parallel Luo said. Boros. Just as Pink Sigluo was explaining, a hoarse roar came from the side. A young man quickly stepped forward and asked Pink Sigluo, Vice President, what's the situation with these two? What situation? Pink Sigluo said speechlessly. Did they say His Majesty went to purge the monsters from the entire world? Aren't these two from another world too? How come they're still alive? The young man said, somewhat out of control. Oh, they've already been subdued by His Majesty, Pink Sigluo explained. So now they're citizens of the Empire. The young man angrily pointed at Boros and the Holy Lord and said, the aftermath of their battle killed my whole family. How can they become members of the Federation? These are criminals. This is His Majesty's order. If you think His Majesty's opinion is problematic, you can write a letter to suggest it. Maybe His Majesty will be in a good mood and expel them from the Federation, Pink Sigluo said indifferently. They had expected this kind of thing. Forcibly bringing together a bunch of people with old grudges would definitely cause a lot of trouble. But he killed my whole family, the young man said. The chaos here also attracted the attention of those around them. Are your whole family members of the Earth Federation? Parallel Luo asked. People who aren't part of the Earth Federation have no human rights. But I am a member of the Earth Federation, the young man said. But you weren't killed by him. We'll arrest a murderer once you're killed, Parallel Luo said. So this is the law of the Earth Federation, Holy Lord, and Boros pondered. As long as you don't break the law, you're fine. Interesting. Do you have any more questions? If not, don't bother us anymore, otherwise you're obstructing our official duties, Parallel Luo asked. I have a problem. At this moment, another man stood up and said, I oppose adding these non-human species to the Earth Federation. The Earth Federation should uphold human supremacy. All non-human races should either become slaves or be slaughtered. The young man's eyes lit up and he raised his hands without hesitation, saying, I agree. These non-human races should have been slaughtered long ago. What's the point of keeping them? The Earth Federation has enough humans. Your Majesty is human, and we are human too. Other non-human races should be inferior. Yes, besides humans, beastmen are also inferior. I don't think Mo people are human. White people and yellow people are the superior people. I propose that Chutai be expelled from the human race. I propose that those who don't like cilantro be expelled from the human race. Homosexuals are not human in spirit either. And are people who like to eat salty tofu pudding still human? For a moment, all kinds of protests came from these people. Chapter 140 Injecting Positive Energy. The scene descended into chaos. All sorts of people, each with their own agenda, began shouting. Some were genuine human supremacists, while others, like the young man before them, sought to use this pretext to kill Boros and the Holy Lord. There were also racists, anti-religious individuals, anti-homosexuals. In short, these people came with various motives, including not only newly arrived civilians from this world, but also officers from parallel worlds who had always considered humans superior. Parallel Luo helplessly observed the chaos before him. Unlike these people, he secretly supported human supremacy but didn't want to expel non-humans from the Empire. The stronger the Earth Federation, the greater the scope of their authority and power. However, because the Federation law wasn't actually drafted by John but rather cobbled together by these original parallel world nations based on their interpretations of the Holy Lord's will, it had considerable room for interpretation. Since its enactment, John hadn't offered any opinion on the specific content of the law, so it had remained in effect for over 2 months. But now, judging from public opinion, many humans clearly objected to the equal status of humans and non-humans in the law, forcing them to consider whether to inquire about John's opinion on the matter. John was unaware of the strange happenings here. After dealing with Thanos and other miscellaneous matters, some major events awaited him. In a detached villa on the outskirts of Los Angeles, John, who had been suppressing his emotions for over 2 months, decided to unleash himself tonight. It turned out that the seaside villa had disappeared along with New York, so hellish blizzard had moved here. Standing at the door, John gently knocked. As the door opened, John entered the villa, grabbed hellish blizzard's hand in the entryway, and pressed her against the wall, saying, I can't wait any longer. Let's start now, right here. Just as he was about to take it a step further, hellish blizzard blushed and said, wait a minute, not here. Seeing that she hesitated, John, who had already taken his pants off, reluctantly stopped, picked up Blizzard, and carried her inside, asking, Is there anything else? Who comes back and immediately rushes into this? Aren't you going to tell me what you've been doing these past 2 months? Hellish Blizzard, held in his arms, buried her head in John's chest. Well, that's a long story. John carried Hellish Blizzard into the bedroom, looking at Betty and the other women, whose faces were flushed with embarrassment. To save time, let's talk while we sit. As soon as he finished speaking, a flurry of clothes flew through the air, and all the women in the room let out shy screams. John spent the entire night condensing his experiences in the parallel world over the past 2 months into a story for the women. After he finished, seemingly because the content was too rich, they all rolled their eyes and sprawled out on the bed. In the end, only Hellish Blizzard, panting heavily, her dark green hair sticking to her neck with sweat, turned to John and said, So, in these past 2 months, you haven't had an affair. What do you mean, have you? We're just in a simple romantic relationship right now. Even if I messed around, it wouldn't be an affair. And it's only been 2 months, is that a long time? John corrected her, dissatisfied. Seeing Betty and the others collapsed on the bed, nearly unconscious, Hellish Blizzard said from the bottom of her heart, I've been holding it in for so long. And what's with this Penny you mentioned earlier? How old is she? John said speechlessly. Even though I have full control, she's still too young. Don't use your filthy thoughts to judge me. Hellish blizzard, hell. John, who was being mocked, couldn't stand it anymore and stood up righteously, saying, your thoughts are indeed too filthy. It seems I didn't purify you properly just now. For your mental health, I will continue to instill positive energy in you. No. My back is going to break. Hellish blizzard looked at John in horror. At this rate, even the most fertile land would be ruined by this nuclear fusion ox. At noon, facing hellish blizzard who was really reaching the limit of her physical strength, John reluctantly stopped and then helplessly chose to return to the ruins of New York. Upon returning, John found the entire ruins a scene of protest, with people chanting slogans like eliminate the alien race and human supremacy. What's going on? John asked, approaching Pink Singlow. These people think your majesty is human, and they are of the same race, so they believe humanity is supreme and want special privileges in the Earth Federation, Pink Singlow explained simply. They're really just being nosy. They haven't even had a few good days and they're already thinking about eliminating dissidents, John thought to himself, looking at Pink Singlow. And you, what do you think? Your Majesty's thoughts are my thoughts, your Majesty's opinions are my opinions. Go away, stop talking nonsense. Speak your true thoughts. John gently slapped the back of his head, interrupting his flattery. Yes, your Majesty, my opinion actually includes some support for human supremacy. Pink Singlow observed John's expression throughout his speech, and when John remained expressionless halfway through, he began to backtrack. Yes, but I know deep down that under federal law, every citizen is equal, a lamb to His Majesty, a war dog to His Majesty. So, although my personal opinion is that humanity is supreme, I remember my duty as the Vice President of the Earth Federation, bestowed by His Majesty, and therefore firmly oppose my previous opinion. I understand. John nodded slightly, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, but instead asked a different question. How is the reception going in other parts of Earth? The reception is going very well. With your Majesty's wise and powerful leadership in bringing Boros and the others under your command, it is expected that Earth will be completely under your control within 3 days. Then we can begin to receive the alien dimension and Thanos' outer space forces. I'll hold a small meeting later. The topic is about racial issues. Remember to make sure all citizens remember the central message of this meeting. John said, swallowing another reactor. Yes, don't worry. Every word you say is worth remembering for all citizens. Parallel Luo nodded repeatedly, then immediately arranged for his men to inform the organization of the meeting. Just over 10 minutes later, thanks to their exceptional mobilization capabilities, a large group of people, including Jason, Parallel, and Loco Luo, gathered in the conference room. Furthermore, the entire meeting was broadcast live, and all citizens were compelled to stay up and watch. Chapter 141 Equality for All. On the ruins of New York, new buildings have risen one after another, thanks to the country's advanced infrastructure. Upon learning that New York was actually the city His Majesty had lived in since childhood, the leaders immediately decided that the future headquarters of the Earth Federation would be located there. At the very center of the headquarters stood a magnificent government building. Inside the meeting room, John sat at the head of the table, looking down at the officials below. I've heard that there's a lot of disagreement about racial issues within the Federation lately, John said, breaking the silence. Yes, Your Majesty, many citizens are dissatisfied with the equal status of humans and other races under federal law. A significant number of these citizens have family members who died at the hands of other races, Jason stated matter-of-factly. Therefore, Your Majesty needs to make a decision on this matter. After all, as our Earth Federation continues to develop, we will absorb more and more other races, and this is a problem we must face. Other races? John looked at Jason's casually chosen word, setting the tone, then scanned the meeting room. They were all humans, not a single non-human was present. Although the meeting was broadcast globally, those who could ultimately offer their opinions to John weren't all human. Given his appearance, it's no wonder they felt he was biased towards humans. Regardless of left or right, they're all infinitely subdivided. John, looking at the crowd below, suddenly felt a surge of anger. He snapped off the armrest of his chair and, in front of the entire audience, randomly smashed an official's body to pieces. Boom. A sound like a mortar shell rang out from where the official had been, causing everyone to shudder and instinctively turn around to see that the spot where the official had stood had become a crater a meter in diameter. What's so interesting about a dead body? Look at me. John slammed his hand on the remaining armrest, his tone incredibly stern. After these people turned around, John finally spoke. Who the hell gave you the illusion that you're human? The entire Earth Federation is just a pack of dogs I keep. If I'm unhappy, I can kill you all, and you can't resist. Human supremacy? Who's human with you? Just because you look human doesn't mean you're human. I've never considered myself human, John said, patting the armrest. After human supremacy? Next, will it be human supremacy for a certain skin color? Then racial supremacy within that skin color? And then, step by step, dehumanizing others according to region? John stood up and walked down the steps, looking at these officials who seemed like ostriches, and said, "Speak up, are you mute?" "No, I only have His Majesty as my son. The Earth Federation should be supreme under His Majesty. We are all just lambs herded by His Majesty," Jason hurriedly explained. But before he could even open his mouth, John grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up, coldly asking, "Jason, do you think I'm human?" Jason, held captive, stared at the crimson light in John's eyes, as if a single wrong answer would melt him under his intense gaze. "Yes, or no?" John repeated. Jason was agonizing over the answer, yes or no, no or no. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Finally, facing John's growing impatience, Jason recklessly declared, "No, His Majesty is not human, His Majesty is a god among men." After uttering these words, Jason closed his eyes, awaiting death, but John gently set him down. John returned to his seat and gave his final order. All those who participated in the march, classify them as D-level personnel. A bunch of ignorant bastards, you've only had a few days of good life, and you're already thinking about this bullshit. I'm telling you clearly here, even if only one race remains in the Earth Federation in the end, that race will not be human, and certainly not Earthlings, John stated firmly. He wondered if these people were insane. How could they possibly believe that someone born and raised in human society would side with humans to oppress other species they'd never even seen before? It was utterly ridiculous. In his previous life, when he was just an ordinary person, only humans oppressed and deceived him. In this life, transmigrated into the Marvel Universe, he was still nearly killed by a missile from Ross, a human. Reflecting on his life, all the pain and sorrow John remembered were inflicted by humans. And now these people were suddenly talking about human supremacy? What a joke. He was already being kind by not slaughtering all of humanity out of anger. He established the Earth Federation only out of compassion from his past poverty, a hidden desire for equality, not some bullshit about human supremacy. In his eyes, these were just his dogs, and he didn't care if they were black or white. At most, he'd pick a couple of female dogs that suited his tastes. "Did you all hear that?" John asked, staring at the officials below. Yes, Jason and the others nodded repeatedly. "Damn it, if you insult my intelligence with this kind of nonsense again, then your race that thinks it's superior can simply cease to exist." John flicked his sleeves and turned to leave the conference room. Once John was completely out of sight, Jason, Pinglo, and the others exchanged dry smiles. This had really gotten out of hand. In a New York bar, Boros and Shendu watched the live stream, while Thanos took a sip of beer with interest and said, "That's more like it. True powerhouses aren't limited by race. Before I conquer the galaxy, I'll wipe out my own race first." Thanos' demeanor at this moment was like that of a carefree middle-aged man. After submitting to the Homelanders, he no longer needed to worry about urbanizing the entire universe. He was completely carefree. This feeling of having someone else to shoulder the burden made him feel somewhat content. Boros and Shendu glanced at Thanos with disdain. What was so proud of about wiping out one's own race? Behind them, those who had previously participated in the march were being arrested by soldiers, crying and screaming, and were demoted to D-class personnel. At this moment, two sergeants approached them and said, "General Boros, His Majesty has given you a new mission." "Oh?" Boros asked curiously, "What mission?" The sergeant respectfully handed over a slip of paper, saying, "His Majesty says that since you enjoy fighting so much, go to this address to find a guy named Strange. He will provide you with a constant stream of enemies. At the same time, General Saint Lord, His Majesty wants you to rest and then expand your territory across the interdimensional portal to Earth. while General Thanos needs to bring the entire Milky Way galaxy under his control. Just as the sergeant was speaking, a space-time portal over 5 meters tall appeared in a bustling city in East Asia on this planet. The last 2 lines are a poem and don't directly relate to the preceding text. Today, my sword points towards the clouds. I love dogs, I love people, and I love the heavens. Just kidding, Dogemoji. Chapter 142 DC World. 3 days later, in the White House of a parallel universe. John sat cross-legged on the sofa, while Penny nestled in his arms, her eyes fixed intently on the electronic screen in front of them. According to his plan, after more than 2 months of suppressed desire, he was supposed to have a 7-day, 7-night uninhibited party. However, before he could even enjoy it for a few days, there was a knock on the door. When he opened it, he saw Penny holding her skirt, looking at him expectantly. "John, do you have time? Let's play games." "Of course, if not, that's fine too." John, who was more responsive to gentle persuasion than force, could only rest his chin lightly on Penny's shoulder, his arms around her like a giant pillow, while his fingers manipulated the controller, slowly moving and controlling the character on the screen. "But I remember you should still be in school at your age, right?" John said. "Should I find you a school so you don't become illiterate?" "HMPH, I already have a school," Penny said, blushing. "Aunt Liv arranged a school for me during the 2 months John was locked up. I just came to visit John now that I'm on a long holiday. Besides, John didn't even finish high school." "John is the illiterate one," Penny said proudly. "Oh right, I'm illiterate," John replied dismissively. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed absurd. He hadn't even graduated high school yet, and he was already the de facto ruler of multiple planets. It had only been less than half a year since he stormed the White House. One thing after another had happened, incredibly fast-paced. So much had happened. "But now I can finally rest a bit. From now on, I just need to improve my strength step by step." John leaned gently on the girl's shoulder, unconsciously relaxing a little. But soon, the information from the wristwatch on the girl's arm drew his attention. After finishing a game, Penny finally turned her attention to her watch, gently tapping it open. A serious voice from the female version of Dr. Octopus came through. "Penny, is Her Majesty beside you now?" "Yes, Aunt Liv, what do you need John for?" "Your Majesty, we just discovered a rather interesting interdimensional portal. According to our advanced team's investigation, we suspect the other side of the portal leads to the DC universe." "DC? The DC of Superman?" John confirmed. "Yes, I discovered traces of Gotham City and Batman in this world," the female version of Dr. Octopus said. "I'll come and take a look." John gently ruffled Penny's hair. "I have something to do, so we might have to play this game later." "Okay." Penny nodded obediently, though reluctant. She understood the seriousness of the DC Comics connection. John gently picked Penny up and placed her on the sofa, then instantly left, returning to reality the next second. "Tell me what happened," John said, standing in front of Dr. Octopus, but then, finding her too slow, he used his super speed to investigate himself. "Just 3 days ago, a portal appeared in what used to be Myanmar, and it was immediately seen by nearby residents, who then reported it to us via their smart terminals." Dr. Octopus began to explain, but John stopped him with a raised hand. "No need to say more. I just pulled up the smart terminal records of all the participants over the past 3 days. I know more than you do." Dr. Octopus shut up at the opportune moment, while John silently pondered. According to the investigation data, this portal only led to the DC universe of the movie version of Zack Snyder. In terms of combat power, even if Shendu went there, he could easily rule that planet. Since that was the case, John no longer hesitated and looked at Dr. Octopus, saying, "Let Shendu come with me next time and take down that planet." "Yes," Dr. Octopus replied, and 3 minutes later, a bewildered Shendu was teleported there by magic. "Your Majesty, what do you need me for?" Shendu asked in a hoarse voice. "Come with me on a business trip. We don't need to go to that ancient world anymore, there's a new world here," John said. "Your Majesty, you're going to?" The Holy Lord was surprised, suspecting that the other side was some high-level world. He began to consider whether to ask for a few days off and push this matter on to Borwas, that battle maniac. "Yes, just come with me. Remember to bring the follow-up troops. Don't worry, if we don't count certain background characters, It's just a low-level world with a maximum combat power of less than level 6, John said simply. Seeing that John had said so, the Holy Lord could only agree, otherwise, if he didn't keep face, he would be the one to die. Night, on Earth in the DC world, an unidentified object approached Earth at the speed of light. After this UFO approached Earth, it hovered in the sky above the United States in full view of everyone. Its undisguised intentions, extraordinary speed, and peculiar shape were almost a naked declaration to humanity that it was an alien spaceship belonging to extraterrestrial life. Shortly after the spaceship appeared, the entire Earth signal was invaded. All televisions, computers, and other devices on Earth that could receive signals turned the programs they were playing into noise and white dots with snow symbols. Shortly after, the static and snow on the television screen changed, and the same sentence was spoken in various languages and scripts from around the world. You are not alone. Chinese, English, French, German, Spanish. As the languages changed, until all the languages had been spoken, the television screen changed again, showing an indistinct humanoid creature speaking in English. I am General Zod. I come from a distant planet. I crossed the galaxy to Earth, searching for one of my people. For a long time, your world sheltered him. During his time on Earth, he looked exactly like you, but he behaved differently in some ways. And now, I demand that you return him to me, especially those who already know his whereabouts. He will try to integrate into your world. He will look like you, but he does not belong to you. The fate of your planet is in your hands. Kal-El, listen up, surrender within 24 hours, or let the world bear the consequences. After announcing its existence to the humans of this planet, the previously compromised signal returned to normal, and Earth was plunged into chaos, gripped by panic over the alien invasion. But it didn't last long. The next moment, global signals were hacked again, and programs that were playing normally were accessed once more. Earthlings, not again? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Kryptonians. Are you there? Can you hear me? On Earth, every running electronic device capable of broadcasting blared the boy's clear voice. Everyone stared in astonishment at the handsome young man, who appeared to be under 20, on the screen. Compared to the boy's appearance, the 4 or 5 meter tall, grotesque monster in shorts standing behind him was far more eye-catching. Ignore that signal. Just listen to me. My name is John Kent, the Supreme Emperor of the Earth Federation. I am about to invade your planet. John, with his legs crossed, announced his presence to the entire planet. I know you might find this hard to accept, but that's none of my business. John stood up and said, if you don't want your entire planet to perish, you'd better kneel down and submit to me. 2 hours later, I will arrive at the White House in the United States. Yes, the White House again. You're the boss of Earth, so you'd better be prepared to surrender within half an hour. Otherwise, you will face very severe punishment. John said, waving his hand to order his subordinates to shut down the broadcast. As the signal finally shut down completely, the entire human government was stunned. Had their planet been targeted by 2 alien civilizations in a single day? The odds were incredibly low. Ignoring their bewilderment, Zod turned to his subordinates and asked, Fiona, immediately scan this planet for any other spaceships, and find out where the signal came from. After a while, Fiona returned, having completed her search. I've already searched. No trace of any spaceships has been found. They may have hidden themselves. However, they have no intention of hiding their signal. We can pinpoint their location immediately. So confident? In that case, let's go and meet them. Zod's lips curled into a smile. I don't mind a little maneuver before annihilating humanity. Order the entire army to advance towards that signal direction, Zod announced. The next moment, the object that had been silently hovering over America began to move, accelerating towards its destination. The Kryptonian spaceship's sudden movement naturally didn't escape the detection of various countries. At the international conference, the personnel monitoring the object immediately reported, President, just now, a spacecraft over the United States began to move, heading towards France. The latter signal came from France. It seems the 2 civilizations that sent the signals are preparing to make contact, the U.S. president said gravely. Now it depends on whether they negotiate or go to war. Compared to other countries, the French president's expression was less grim. After all, the meeting place was in France, and near the French capital at that. If war broke out, regardless of what would happen to the alien civilization, they would definitely be in trouble. A few minutes later, John, who had been waiting silently, looked up and saw the spacecraft approaching at high speed in the distance. They're quite cautious, bringing their main fleet directly. After traveling for a while, the Kryptonian spaceship hovered quietly above John, then slowly descended, its 3 prongs plunging directly into the ground. Several beetle-shaped airships then emerged from the mothership and landed in front of John. As the hatches opened, several Kryptonians disembarked. "State your race, kid," Zod said arrogantly, looking down at the young man. While they were talking, Clark Kent, several kilometers away, watched from afar. "Kryptonians," John replied calmly, arms crossed. "Zod? You're Kryptonian too?" Zod asked, his composure failing him, before scrutinizing John from head to toe. Clark, in the distance, activated his supervision in shock, only to see the other's extraordinary physical abilities, seemingly even stronger than his own. "That's right, but don't think that just because you're my kin you won't be my lackey," John said. "Like a lackey?" Hearing the voice from the translator, Zod's eyes darkened. This guy was even more arrogant than him. Even if this guy was truly his kin, he still needed to teach him a lesson. But the boy in front of him seemed completely unconcerned, saying to the 4 or 5 meter tall monster behind him, "Holy Lord, they're yours. Remember to hold back, don't kill them." "Yes, Your Majesty." Seeing that it was finally his turn, the Holy Lord grinned and stepped forward, clenching his fist, saying, "I definitely won't kill them." John, standing to the side, rubbed his nose uncomfortably. The Kryptonian gas drifting from the spaceship made him slightly allergic, causing him to swallow another nuclear fusion pill to calm his nerves. Seeing the Holy Lord approaching, Zod was annoyed. The kid opposite was too arrogant, starting a fight without even exchanging words. Even if he won, he would still. The next moment, Zod coughed up a mouthful of blood, staring blankly at the green fist that had shattered the protective field in his abdomen. "Be careful, you guys don't die." The Holy Lord chuckled, raising his foot and kicking Zod away. "Protect the general." Fiona, standing nearby, exclaimed in alarm as she watched the general fly away. In a split second, Shendu moved with incredible speed, controlling his strength to avoid killing them, instantly shattering the protective shields on the Kryptonians' bodies and sending them flying thousands of meters. In the distance, the dozen or so people arced gracefully through the air before crashing down together, forming a small hill. When the Kryptonians regained their senses, they were horrified to find their protective shields shattered, and the planet's atmosphere and sunlight began to relentlessly bombard them. Intense discomfort manifested itself. Accustomed to the smell of a kryptonite, Earth's atmosphere felt like poison, almost killing them instantly. Using his levitation ability, Shendu flew to them. Seeing their pain, he wondered if he had gone too far and quickly used the levitation charm on them. Sure enough, the wounds he had inflicted healed instantly, and under the sunlight, their physical abilities increased dramatically. Within seconds, they gained X-ray vision. Feeling the power surging through their bodies, no less than that of the combat suit, Zod and the other Kryptonians grinned maliciously at Shendu and said, "Next, let's begin the second round." PFFT. "Do you think you're His Majesty? What are you trying to prove?" Shendu punched them again, sending them flying through the air, mouths full of blood. Chapter 144 Call Him Your Majesty. The DC Universe, John was sunbathing on a deck chair. Meanwhile, above Paris, the French capital, Shendu was brutally torturing a dozen or so Kryptonians. Using his superhuman speed, Shendu was kicking Zod in the back one moment, and the next he was grabbing Fiona by the head and hurling her like a ragdoll. At speeds exceeding 10 times the speed of sound, the two Kryptonians collided without any chance of avoidance. Boom! The impact of the two steel-like bodies shattered the glass of the city below, sending large fragments raining down, eliciting screams from the onlookers. Shendu was practically single-handedly kicking these dozen or so Kryptonians like a football, while simultaneously controlling his strength to avoid killing them. How is this possible? Zod was being manipulated by Shendu like a ragdoll, their strength continuing to increase even under the sunlight. 100,000 tons, 200,000 tons, 500,000 tons. In those few minutes of torture, their arm strength had climbed to 1,000,000 tons. Each time they increased their strength, the Holy Lord would unleash even more power to blast them. Just from this one-sided beating, if it weren't for the monster's peculiar healing ability, they would have all died with shattered bones long ago. Still not surrendering, the Holy Lord demanded, torturing them while simultaneously urging them to surrender over Paris. Do you think your ever-increasing strength can rival His Majesty? Dream on. With that, the Holy Lord kicked Zod's kidney, shattering it, and then healed it with a horse charm. I can toy with you all with just 1,000th of my power, while His Majesty's strength is at least 100 times mine. Do the math yourselves. How could he be 100,000 times stronger than me? Zod didn't believe it at all, thinking it was just psychological manipulation. Zod remained calm, because they still had a Kryptonian ship equipped with planet-destroying weapons. If they used those weapons, everything would be alright, right? John, who had been lying on the recliner with his eyes closed, slightly opened his right eye, his gaze fixed on the departing spaceship. The next moment, in Zod's dazed gaze, a crimson beam of light, almost visible to anyone looking up across the entire hemisphere, flashed past, sweeping across the Kryptonian spaceship just as it was about to take off. The Kryptonian spaceship, struck, first froze in midair, then began to shift slightly, eventually widening until its upper half, under the influence of gravity, slowly slid down, revealing a flat surface at the cut, like a silver mirror. Thousands of Kryptonians escaped from the crashing alien spaceship in beetle-shaped airships. Seemingly noticing Zod's stunned state, Shendu stopped his attack and chuckled, "Hey, you don't actually think that flying thing can save you, do you? I advise you to surrender quickly, or you'll get a little less beating," Shendu said seriously. Simply torturing someone was getting boring. He'd been kicking them for a few minutes and was starting to get tired of it. "Don't even think about it," Zod roared, but the next moment, all his teeth were knocked out by Shendu's tail whip. "Damn it, still so tough even after being hit. Looks like I've been too lenient with you. Now, let's begin the second round. Since you won't agree, I'm going to increase the intensity," Shendu said ruthlessly. He had only tried blunt force before. Since his horse charm had healing abilities, he could try large intestine sashimi, human pig, and His Majesty's famous creations, brain innovite and human centipede. 3 minutes later, John sat up from the recliner and saw Shendu flying back with a dozen or so Kryptonians. "Your Majesty, mission accomplished." Shendu smiled, but his terrifying appearance made his smile look like a cry. "Are you really one of my kind?" Zod looked at John, his face pale. "Of course, I'm also a Kryptonian," John admitted, which made Zod feel a little better. At least it wasn't shameful to say that he was working for one of his own. But the next moment, Zod's somewhat improved expression turned grim again, as he felt his power being gradually drained from his body. "What's going on? Why has my power returned to its original level?" Zod looked at John. "Kryptonite can cause your cells, which have been enhanced by the yellow sun, to degenerate. Because the spaceship just crashed, the air is now filled with the smell of kryptonite." John rubbed his nose uncomfortably. The kryptonite powder in the air made John's cells feel drowsy as well. Fortunately, he currently had over 4,000 nuclear fusion reactors inside him, and the two neutralized each other. Apart from some sensitivity, it didn't suppress or hinder his combat power, and his strength continued to steadily increase. In fact, John had been constantly monitoring the changes in his body throughout his current world. If his physical condition showed even the slightest sign of decline due to the kryptonite, he would immediately return to his original world and choose to destroy the planet beneath his feet. Fortunately, such a terrifying thing didn't happen. The kryptonite neutralized the reactors, saving the planet from destruction. Seeing Zod's disrespectful manner, the Holy Lord reminded him, "Next time, remember to use the honorific Your Majesty before you speak. You're being disrespectful." Zod glared angrily at the Holy Lord, thinking how servile he was. If it weren't for the fact that his stamina was being drained by the kryptonite, he would have already charged forward to fight. "Go and gather all the Kryptonians who escaped earlier. Then, we'll rule this planet together," John instructed. This time, Zod didn't have much objection to ruling the planet instead of destroying it. He had never realized that his planet's environment was actually a constraint, and had even considered transforming the entire planet into its original Kryptonian form. Half an hour later, thousands of sun-baked Kryptonians stood before John, all curiously eyeing their kin. "One more person is needed," John said slowly. "Impossible, I acknowledge all Kryptonians." Zod tried to retort, but was slapped to the ground by Shendu in the next moment. How many times have I told you, before expressing your opinion, you must address him as your majesty? The other Kryptonians, seeing their commander knocked down, all glared angrily at Shendu, but ultimately did not step forward. Have you forgotten the purpose of your visit to this planet? John said, his gaze fixed on Clark Kent in the distance. If you don't come over, I'm coming. Just from that one glance, Clark felt a chill run down his spine, the illusion of an insect being stared at by a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then the next moment he collapsed at John's feet. Chapter 145 The 18 Levels of Hell. What happened? How did I end up here? Clark scrambled to his feet, completely bewildered. The other Kryptonians stared in surprise at the giant before them, assuming he'd teleported there. Zod was the first to react, stepping forward and asking directly, "You're Kal-El? The Kryptonian who came to Earth over 30 years ago?" "Yes, but here I am," called Clark Kent. Clark nodded. "You've even been assimilated by the natives of this civilization." Zod's eyes began to show disdain, sensing the other's lack of purity. "Now that everyone's here, let me assign you your tasks," John said. "After I conquer this planet, you'll stay here and guard it properly. Don't wander around aimlessly." He still felt a bit uncomfortable with these guys who all seemed to have X-ray vision. Wasn't that why he'd gouged out someone's eyes back then? Since they had X-ray vision, these people should just stay in this world and not leave. Rule a planet? How do you plan to rule? Clark asked. Of course, I'll kill whoever rebels. How else would I rule? John retorted. This. Looking at the group of fierce-looking, seemingly harmless men before him, Clark began to seriously consider the very serious question of whether he could defeat them. There's still over an hour until the agreed time. I think we need to find something to do. John tapped his head and said, how about we go to Gotham City? Gotham? Clark was taken aback, having heard of the city's reputation. That's right, I've heard a lot about it. I've heard that the criminals there are the most arrogant, so I want to see who's more arrogant. John grinned and said, especially that brat called the Joker. I'm going to give them a good beating. Yes, that's it, let's go there and thoroughly purify this city. John slapped Clark's forehead and made a decision. Now everyone, follow me. After saying that, John took off, slowly flying towards Gotham at 20 times the speed of sound to accommodate the Kryptonians, leaving the others stunned. Is His Majesty's thinking always this unpredictable? Zod looked at the Holy Lord. What do you know? His Majesty is already so powerful. Why would he be restrained like an ordinary person? Of course, he can do whatever he wants. The Holy Lord snorted coldly, then took off, following John's figure. 10 minutes later, thousands of people were openly hovering above Gotham City. Any Gotham citizen below, unless they were blind, could see the dense swarm of figures floating in the sky. What are these guys doing in Gotham? Bruce Wayne looked up at the Kryptonian army in the distance from his villa, feeling uneasy, sensing that nothing good was about to happen. Now I'm going to explain the rules of the game. In the sky, John, seemingly out of nowhere, handed out the U.S. Constitution. These are the rules. You have a few seconds to memorize this entire book, and then the game can begin. Anyone in this city who has committed a crime punishable by life imprisonment, drag them all to this square below. You have 3 minutes, so hurry up. After John finished speaking, he threw the thick copy of the U.S. Constitution out. The book was still in the air when Zod and his companions tore it apart page by page, passing it around and memorizing every page within seconds. Once they had it all, they flew down towards the city below. Gotham City was in complete chaos, as thousands of Kryptonians, mimicking John's earlier strategy, first raided the prisons and police stations, ransacking the city's crime database. Then, they compared the prisoners' appearances in the prisons, picking out those deserving life imprisonment and dumping them in the plaza. After that, they began matching photos from the database across the city to arrest criminals. Gotham City's criminals were highly skilled, even the most capable prisons couldn't contain them, and most had escaped. Therefore, the prisons were only a small part of the operation. These thousands of Kryptonians moved in perfect unison, systematically roaming the streets of Gotham City, arresting criminal after criminal and tossing them into the plaza. Soon, the entire plaza was filled with tens of thousands of criminals, all serving life sentences. They're working so hard, I need to prepare something, John said softly, then vanished in an instant. 3 minutes later, tens of thousands of prisoners, all serving at least life sentences, were neatly bound hand and foot, gagged, and thrown onto the plaza. Most looked around in panic, only a few remained unfazed. Tisk tisk tisk. John marveled at the essence of the city, then looked at Shendu and said, "I'll need your healing abilities later." "No problem, Your Majesty," Shendu nodded. "You all remember their crimes, right?" John looked at the Kryptonians, who nodded matter-of-factly, given their superhuman intelligence. "Then, following the method of the 18 levels of hell, apply the healing spell to them according to their crimes." John spoke, the Kryptonians looking completely oblivious, while Shendu's expression changed slightly. "First is the tongue-pulling hell. Those who sow discord, slander, are glib, use clever words, or lie will all be sent to the tongue-pulling hell. Their tongues will be clamped with iron pincers and pulled out, then the Holy Lord will heal them, and this will be repeated endlessly." John laughed, tossing out a bunch of pincers, and the Kryptonians finally showed a slight discomfort on their faces. The second level is the scissors hell. Those who have forced others into obscene acts will have their 10 fingers cut off with scissors. The third level is the iron tree hell. John spoke calmly, and the more he spoke, the uglier the Kryptonians' faces became. After all, they were the ones who would be carrying out these punishments. By the time he had finished explaining the 18 levels of hell, the Kryptonians were disgusted by the cruel punishments, and the Holy Lord's face was even more grim, since he would be using the horse talisman to observe the entire process. What are you waiting for? Start increasing the intensity for these criminals. Each person must experience at least 10 minutes of hellish torture. If someone has committed multiple crimes, then they will experience 10 minutes for each crime separately, John urged. At his command, the Kryptonians reluctantly picked up their tools and began working. The next moment, agonizing screams erupted from the mouths of these criminals serving life sentences, and the pungent smell of blood carried far and wide by the breeze. Chapter 146 The Ultimate Insult. In Gotham City's plaza, the bloody torture lasted for half an hour before finally coming to an end. Some particularly notorious criminals had essentially committed every level of hell imaginable. To save time, John ordered that the tortures be performed simultaneously, not in rotation. For example, the tongue-pulling torture was done while simultaneously and during the scissors torture. When the torture was finally over, the entire plaza had transformed into a bloody inferno, littered with the criminals' scattered organs and gushing blood. Thanks to the healing power of the Holy Lord's horse talisman, the criminals remained physically intact. However, the extreme pain had left them too weak to even scream. Their expressions were numb. If they were to undergo a mental evaluation, most of them would qualify for a mental hospital. The Kryptonian who carried out the torture also looked grim, some even feeling nauseous at the sight of these scenes pushing the limits of physiology. Clark closed his eyes, unable to bear the sight. He hadn't participated in the torture himself, but he still couldn't bear to watch. The onlookers felt like vomiting. John, smelling the heavy stench of blood in the air, rose calmly from his seat and flew in front of a man, saying, "If I'm not mistaken, you're the Joker. I've heard so much about you." John sized up the man before him. He was young, his face painted white, with a mouthful of steel teeth, and a head of bright green slicked back hair that made him look like a punk. Unlike the others around him, despite having endured rounds of torture, this guy still stared at him with a smug smile, as if he felt no pain at all. Looking at the man scrutinizing him, the Joker grinned his signature maniacal smile, but the next moment John punched him to the ground. "Was this punch part of your plan?" John asked, tilting his head, then picked up a pistol and pointed it at the Joker, asking, "Guess if I'll shoot." Bang! Bang! Before the Joker could even reply, John fired 2 shots, shattering his knees. But instead of pain, the Joker burst into maniacal laughter. Ha 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 ha. The Joker collapsed to the ground, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "You hate me, but you don't want to kill me at all. Ha ha ha, how interesting." Tisk, even more annoying. John clicked his tongue in displeasure. He disliked 2 types of people. One type was the kind who kept quiet and acted mysterious, as if they had everything under control. The other type was the kind whose schemes were ridiculously rubbish, but who pretended to be wise and relied on the opponent's stupidity to create a plot-driven death. Coincidentally, Gotham City had both types of people gathered there. "Hey, are there any of you who like men?" John looked at the thousands of Kryptonians and asked, "What do you think of this green-haired guy?" Faced with John's question, the Kryptonians' expressions changed, and they all took a step back, looking at him with horrified eyes. "None of you? Looks like the proportion of gay men among Kryptonians is a bit low." John retorted, then looked at the wailing prison uniform in the square. 2 men, fill this Gotham City mob kingpin's head and shoulders, and he'll live. Those with STDs are best, never mind, 20, please. John shouted. Hearing that they could survive, tens of thousands of prisoners in the arena practically wanted to become gay, shouting, me. The Joker's expression changed slightly, then he laughed again, ha ha ha. You think this can break me? But this time, the Joker's smile wasn't as maniacal as before, it was much more normal. No, I didn't mean to break you. John shook his head seriously. I know that for a madman like you, mere physical and mental insults won't work. I just want people to deconstruct you. Isn't the most important thing for someone like you to be cool? In that case, I'll pair you with 20 men. John explained, that way, if you dare say you're the Joker, it won't cause panic, but ridicule. So this is the Joker whose head and body are filled with men, huh? Quite the Joker. Also, I heard you have a Harley Quinn. John looked at the Joker and said, your hair is so green, you've been waiting a long time, haven't you? I'll enjoy her for you. As he spoke, John's gaze swept across the room, quickly finding a hot, brightly colored young woman nearby, and he walked towards her. As he walked, John recalled his past life. Last time, Betty cuckolded the Hulk, and now Harley Quinn had cuckolded the already green-haired Joker. Was he some kind of green-loving monster? By the way, actually I initially wanted Batman to do you, but I thought better of it. John turned back to the Joker, saying, but if it were really him, wouldn't you be even more excited? Mentioning Batman, the Joker's expression changed, his gaze turning from indifferent to sinister. So you really are sexually interested in Batman, huh? Well, I won't reward you then. But if Batman were to sleep with another man in front of you, or be slept with by another man, would you feel like you'd been empty-eyed? John asked curiously. His question wiped the smile from the Joker's face. Indeed, the best way to break the Joker's defenses was with Batman. Ignoring the Joker's pain, John looked at the group of Kryptonians and said, choose the 20 slovenliest ones to give this green-haired guy the ultimate humiliation in the plaza. There are still 40 minutes left, even 20 people don't know if his ass will make it in time. John muttered to himself, then said, kill the rest of them. They're just a waste of food anyway. With that, John walked up to Harley Quinn, grinning as he grabbed her chin and yanked her up. Smelling the blood on her, John laughed, I heard you consider the Joker a god. Well, your god is going to be. Oh, right. John suddenly remembered something, turning back to the Joker, whose prison uniform was already being torn apart, and said, you'd better act elegantly. Batman might be watching you, ha 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 ha. At the end, John burst into maniacal laughter. Compared to the Joker, John now seemed like a demon. Hearing John's words, the Joker's body tensed instantly. I've been considering this chapter for a long time. I don't know if you can accept the torture of the Joker, but I've written it anyway. Chapter 147 Accelerating Domination. 40 minutes later, as the agreed-upon time with the government was approaching, John slowly walked out of the hotel. It must be said, this hotel was quite ingenious. They had installed a double-sided glass panel, preventing anyone from seeing in from the outside, but allowing anyone inside to see clearly out. John then used this glass to exchange ideas with Harley Quinn, letting her observe the Joker's entire exchange until his moral compass shattered. He forced Harley Quinn, then made her watch her beloved Joker being forced by other men. Simultaneously, he let the Joker know that Batman had witnessed his entire ordeal, a truly bizarre and cruel experience. Because there were only 40 minutes, John wasn't in a hurry this time. Looking at the Joker surrounded in the plaza, John turned his gaze away and waved to the Kryptonians, saying, time's up. Next, we're heading to the White House. Seeing that they could finally leave, the Kryptonians breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't want to stay in this hellhole for another second. What had happened was utterly disgusting. Soon, under John's command, a large group left Gotham, leaving behind piles of corpses of tens of thousands in the plaza, and the Joker still being humiliated. From the shadows, Batman emerged, gazing at the blood mist-like plaza and the corpses scattered everywhere. His fingernails dug almost into the skin of his palms. He stepped forward, roughly tearing open the still shaking prison uniforms. Looking at the Joker, his jaw dislocated and barely clothed, he sighed softly, his emotions unreadable. Seeing that it was Batman, the Joker's inner turmoil became even more indescribable. Go to jail, Batman said coldly, looking at the 21 survivors in the plaza. He glanced at Commissioner Gordon, said nothing more, and turned to leave. I can't fight them with my own strength. I need to form an alliance specifically against that alien. He will be the biggest destabilizing factor on this planet, Batman thought. As for the candidate, he already had a clear idea. Meanwhile, John, leading a group of Kryptonians and Shendu, flew towards Washington like migrating geese. After a few minutes of travel, they landed at the White House gates, where heavily armed and densely packed troops stood blocking the entrance. Sigh, it's the same old story. Every time we conquer a planet, these people can't cooperate with us willingly. We always have to beat them up first, John lamented, pointing to the army below. The Holy Lord, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. Although he had only been with John for 4 days, he had still managed to pacify a planet beyond a dimensional portal. Because of John's concept of equality for all, every intelligent life form theoretically had the potential to join the Earth Federation. Therefore, the Holy Lord had a maximum killing quota for each world, requiring them to pacify the world by keeping it below that number. The result was that when it came to actually fighting, they were hesitant and restrained. In the past, if they dared to resist, he would have already launched a massacre organized by nation. As John spoke, the army below immediately noticed the group swaggering in the sky. Immediately, a man resembling a general, holding a megaphone, said, "Emperor of the Earth Federation, the life forms on our planet have been communicating with you in a friendly manner. Please calm down and talk to us. And don't let the situation escalate." "I don't want friendly communication," John said calmly. "I just want to turn every life form I see in every civilization into my dogs." "Is that too much to ask compared to the complete annihilation of you?" John's voice, amplified by biological means, reached the ears of the army below and was then broadcast live across the entire planet. His arrogant, or rather, swaggering words enraged the humans on this planet. They watched on television, clamoring to declare war on this alien civilization. John's words made the situation utterly irreversible. The general below immediately ordered his men to open fire, and in the next instant, shells as thick as bowls flew from the tanks' muzzles. "I've left it to you. Kill everyone who directly or indirectly gave us the order to attack. Of course, you can also make them slaves." John ordered the Kryptonians and the Holy Lord. After speaking, ignoring the gunfire below, he flew directly into the White House, found a room at random, and settled down, completely ignoring the screams outside. 2 hours later, John rubbed his eyes and came out of the room. A group of people were kneeling outside, trembling with fear. "This planet is being conquered faster and faster," John said, looking at the officials kneeling in front of him. "By the way, where's that Clark Kent?" John looked at the Kryptonians. One of them was missing. "Your Majesty, it seems that the kid was unhappy with our indiscriminate killing, so he ran away." Zod was now calling him Your Majesty more and more fluently. "Do you want me to go and bring him back?" the Holy Lord asked. "Forget it, if he doesn't cause trouble, I can't be bothered with him." John waved his hand lightly. Zod, standing to the side, asked, "That kid has the primal codex inside him, so should I go retrieve it?" "I said forget it, didn't you hear me?" John repeated impatiently, then Shendu slapped Zod on the back of the head again. This time, Zod wasn't angry. Instead, he was filled with relief at surviving, because he thought of the Joker. Seeing the Joker's fate, these Kryptonians were already terrified of John, fearing some strange idea might pop into his head again. "Your Majesty, what do we need to do next?" Shendu asked respectfully from the side. "However other worlds are ruled, we will do it here the same way. Equality, justice, and the rule of law under our rule must be fully implemented," John said, turning his back. "And none of the D-class personnel can be spared." Equality? Justice? Rule of law? Zod and the other Kryptonians were completely bewildered. Did these words have anything to do with His Majesty? After John left, Zod approached the Holy Lord and asked, "How did you rule other planets before? And where did you come from? You're so powerful, how come we've never heard of you in the universe before? We're not on the same universe. How could you possibly know about me?" The Holy Lord looked down at Zod and said, "Watch carefully, learn well. This is your first time being His Majesty's dog, young man. There are still many things you don't understand." "Not in the same universe?" Zod's eyes showed confusion. "Simply put, His Majesty and I are from other universes. I'll explain this to you slowly later. Now, first, Consolidate your rule over this planet completely, and then consider other matters. Also, don't cause too many casualties, the Holy Lord instructed. Chapter 148 The Fall in Paradise Island. With the defeat of the U.S. government on Earth and the DC universe, the planet was nominally brought under the rule of the Homelanders. Hundreds of thousands of magical slaves were transported from Marvel Earth, connecting the various planets ruled by John. Only then did the people of the DC world realize the colossus that ruled them. With the connection of the planets and the large-scale exchange of people, the people of the DC world discovered that their own world contained characters from another world, and that the experiences of that other world were also part of their own Marvel comics. However, at this point, no one cared much about the comic book plot anymore. After all, with John and the interdimensional intrusion, the storyline was already in complete chaos. Diana looked down at the long line of people below, a hint of worry flashing in her eyes. Under the mandatory requirements of the Earth Federation, every citizen of the DC world had to wear a distributed smart terminal within 3 days. Citizens who didn't wear it would be enslaved upon discovery. The people queuing below were all citizens receiving smart terminals. Once they put them on, they would be completely under the jurisdiction of the federal government. Sizzle. The spotlight behind Diana flickered, and the next moment 2 strangely dressed men stood behind her. Princess of Paradise Island, we need your help, one of the men said in a deep voice. Diana turned around, her expression remarkably calm, and sized up the 2 men before her. The one on her left was a tall man in a black suit, his face resolute, his eyes fixed intently on her. The one on her right was a man with light brown hair. Compared to the resolute man on the left, the man on the right had a kind of unapproachable air, smiling and gently waving at her. Batman Bruce Wayne, state your purpose, Diana said, her gaze sweeping over the smart terminals on their right arms. We need to form an alliance to overthrow the Earth Federation's rule. Humanity doesn't need a god, Bruce said, his eyes extremely serious. Diana pointed at Bruce's right hand and said, don't forget, you're still wearing the Earth Federation's smart terminal on your arm. Every word you say could be heard by that emperor at any time. Don't worry, this smart terminal isn't very technologically advanced. It's already been fooled by the fake images I sent, and it won't send the images from here back to the terminal. Batman said, and as if to demonstrate, he casually took the terminal off his arm. Then why should I agree to rebel with you? Diana retorted. Homelander's strength is clear from the video, we have almost no chance of winning. Because of Paradise Island, Batman said. The Amazons consider themselves the children of God and will never submit to anyone, while John Kent only wants obedient dogs. Paradise Island originally possessed the concealment magic of the gods, so no one discovered it. But now everyone knows from DC Comics that it's Wonder Woman's homeland. Before long, the Earth Federation's conquest will trample Paradise Island. At that time, the free-spirited people of Paradise Island will only have 2 choices, death or becoming collared slaves. Diana's expression turned slightly grave, because Bruce's words weren't just speculation, but almost a prophecy of the future. She couldn't imagine her loved ones submitting. Just as they were speaking, on Paradise Island, Shendu's figure slowly stepped onto the island. Almost the instant his towering figure stepped onto the island, it triggered an immediate alert across the entire island. A dozen Amazonian warriors, calling to their companions, aimed their bows and arrows at the Holy Lord. You, state your purpose, one of the Amazonian warriors shouted. By order of Her Majesty, to rule this island and then take the Mother Box, the Holy Lord declared. Before he could finish speaking, a dozen arrows rained down on him, which he easily deflected with a flick of his wrist. Without even glancing at them, the rabbit talisman activated, and the Holy Lord's figure vanished in an instant, passing the warriors and flying towards the massive stone structure guarding the Mother Box in the distance. Watching the Holy Lord disappear without a trace, the leading Amazonian warrior shouted, quickly, inform Her Majesty the Queen. Tell her that a very powerful intruder has broken in and wants to steal the Mother Box. Before he could finish speaking, they watched helplessly as the structure guarding the Mother Box exploded in an instant, sending massive debris flying into the sky and revealing a hole several meters wide. The Holy Lord floated in the air, retracting his right fist, his gaze coldly fixed on the tense female warriors inside the large hole below. Before they could react, he charged forward and seized the Mother Box. Fire immediately. Seeing the gigantic, green-skinned creature, 4 or 5 meters tall with a dragon's head and a human body, the Amazon warriors shouted. Arrows rained down on the Holy Lord, yet not a single mark was left. The Mother Box's mission is complete. Now it's time to rule this island according to His Majesty's orders. The Holy Lord surveyed the surrounding warriors and the vast, arriving reinforcements from afar amidst the rain of arrows, a flicker of impatience in his eyes. Despite possessing the power to instantly sink the island beneath his feet, he was still bound by Jon's orders to minimize casualties and to enjoy equal treatment with his citizens, a truly restrictive situation. According to Article 34, Paragraph 1 of the federal law, any intelligent life that attacks those spreading the gospel of equality after proclaiming it to the civilians who have helped to expand the land will become slaves of the Earth Federation. The Holy Lord, having grasped the framework in his mind, flew into the air. Holding the Mother Box, braving the rain of arrows, he loudly recited the responsibilities and benefits of joining the Earth Federation. His roar shook the entire island, ensuring the crowd below heard him. Throughout the entire process, the sea of arrows below continued relentlessly for over 3 minutes. Finally finished. Since they haven't stopped attacking, they are attacking messengers spreading His Majesty's gospel. Knowing the law and breaking it is an even greater crime, so don't blame me. They will all become slaves, the Holy Lord said coldly. The next moment, his figure suddenly swooped down, charging towards the Amazon army, directly into their ranks. Half an hour later, only the Holy Lord remained standing on the battlefield. Around him, limbs flew everywhere, and countless Amazon soldiers, missing their limbs, lay on the ground groaning in agony. Relying on the horse talisman, he successfully wounded these precious laborers without killing them. Once he had accomplished this, he sent out a success signal, and the next moment, a spatial portal appeared beside him. Chapter 149 of Fallen Paradise Island. With the defeat of the U.S. government on Earth and the DC universe, the planet was nominally brought under the rule of the Homelanders. Hundreds of thousands of magical slaves were transported from Marvel Earth, connecting the various planets ruled by Jon. Only then did the people of the DC world realize the colossus that ruled them. With the connection of the planets and the large-scale exchange of people, the people of the DC world discovered that their own world contained characters from another world, and that the experiences of that other world were also part of their own Marvel comics. However, at this point, no one cared much about the comic book plot anymore. After all, with Jon and the interdimensional intrusion, the storyline was already in complete chaos. Diana looked down at the long line of people below, a hint of worry flashing in her eyes. Under the mandatory requirements of the Earth Federation, every citizen of the DC world had to wear a distributed smart terminal within 3 days. Citizens who didn't wear it would be enslaved upon discovery. The people queuing below were all citizens receiving smart terminals. Once they put them on, they would be completely under the jurisdiction of the federal government. Sizzle. The spotlight behind Diana flickered, and the next moment 2 strangely dressed men stood behind her. Princess of Paradise Island, we need your help, one of the men said in a deep voice. Diana turned around, her expression remarkably calm, and sized up the 2 men before her. The one on her left was a tall man in a black suit, his face resolute, his eyes fixed intently on her. The one on her right was a man with light brown hair. Compared to the resolute man on the left, the man on the right had a kind of unapproachable air, smiling and gently waving at her. Batman Bruce Wayne, state your purpose, Diana said, her gaze sweeping over the smart terminals on their right arms. We need to form an alliance to overthrow the Earth Federation's rule. Humanity doesn't need a god, Bruce said, his eyes extremely serious. Diana pointed at Bruce's right hand and said, don't forget, you're still wearing the Earth Federation's smart terminal on your arm. Every word you say could be heard by that emperor at any time. Don't worry, this smart terminal isn't very technologically advanced. It's already been fooled by the fake images I sent, and it won't send the images from here back to the terminal. Batman said, and as if to demonstrate, he casually took the terminal off his arm. Then why should I agree to rebel with you? Diana retorted. Homelander's strength is clear from the video, we have almost no chance of winning. Because of Paradise Island, Batman said. The Amazons consider themselves the children of God and will never submit to anyone, while Jon Kent only wants obedient dogs. Paradise Island originally possessed the concealment magic of the gods, so no one discovered it. But now everyone knows from DC Comics that it's Wonder Woman's homeland. Before long, the Earth Federation's conquest will trample Paradise Island. At that time, the free-spirited people of Paradise Island will only have 2 choices, death or becoming collared slaves. Diana's expression turned slightly grave, because Bruce's words weren't just speculation, but almost a prophecy of the future. She couldn't imagine her loved one submitting. Just as they were speaking, on Paradise Island, Shendu's figure slowly stepped onto the island. Almost the instant his towering figure stepped onto the island, it triggered an immediate alert across the entire island. A dozen Amazonian warriors, calling to their companions, aimed their bows and arrows at the Holy Lord. "You, state your purpose," one of the Amazonian warriors shouted. "By order of Her Majesty, to rule this island and then take the Mother Box," the Holy Lord declared. Before he could finish speaking, a dozen arrows rained down on him, which he easily deflected with a flick of his wrist. Without even glancing at them, the rabbit talisman activated, and the Holy Lord's figure vanished in an instant, passing the warriors and flying towards the massive stone structure guarding the Mother Box in the distance. Watching the Holy Lord disappear without a trace, the leading Amazonian warrior shouted, "Quickly, inform Her Majesty the Queen. Tell her that a very powerful intruder has broken in and wants to steal the Mother Box." Before he could finish speaking, they watched helplessly as the structure guarding the Mother Box exploded in an instant, sending massive debris flying into the sky and revealing a hole several meters wide. The Holy Lord floated in the air, retracting his right fist, his gaze coldly fixed on the tense female warriors inside the large hole below. Before they could react, he charged forward and seized the Mother Box. "Fire immediately." Seeing the gigantic, green-skinned creature, 4 or 5 meters tall with a dragon's head and a human body, the Amazon warriors shouted. Arrows rained down on the Holy Lord, yet not a single mark was left. The Mother Box's mission is complete. Now it's time to rule this island according to His Majesty's orders. The Holy Lord surveyed the surrounding warriors and the vast, arriving reinforcements from afar amidst the rain of arrows, a flicker of impatience in his eyes. Despite possessing the power to instantly sink the island beneath his feet, he was still bound by John's orders to minimize casualties and to enjoy equal treatment with his citizens, a truly restrictive situation. According to Article 34, Paragraph 1 of the federal law, any intelligent life that attacks those spreading the gospel of equality after proclaiming it to the civilians who have helped to expand the land will become slaves of the Earth Federation. The Holy Lord, having grasped the framework in his mind, flew into the air. Holding the Mother Box, braving the rain of arrows, he loudly recited the responsibilities and benefits of joining the Earth Federation. His roar shook the entire island, ensuring the crowd below heard him. Throughout the entire process, the sea of arrows below continued relentlessly for over 3 minutes. Finally finished. Since they haven't stopped attacking, they are attacking messengers spreading His Majesty's gospel. Knowing the law and breaking it is an even greater crime, so don't blame me. They will all become slaves, the Holy Lord said coldly. The next moment, his figure suddenly swooped down, charging towards the Amazon army, directly into their ranks. Half an hour later, only the Holy Lord remained standing on the battlefield. Around him, limbs flew everywhere, and countless Amazon soldiers, missing their limbs, lay on the ground groaning in agony. Relying on the horse talisman, he successfully wounded these precious laborers without killing them. Once he had accomplished this, he sent out a success signal, and the next moment, a spatial portal appeared beside him. Chapter 150 Justice League. Greetings, Holy Lord General. As the portal opened, soldiers filed out, solemnly saluting the Holy Lord. All the creatures on this island have been enslaved, the Holy Lord said calmly. His Majesty said these are precious resources, possessing lifespans of at least several thousand years. Remember to send a few to the Research Institute for Dr. Octopus to study. As for the remaining missing limbs, first conduct ideological reform. After that, inject them with lizard serum. One batch will be used as labor to build fortifications, and the other batch will be converted into magical slaves. Yes, Holy Lord General. Do you have another mission to carry out, or would you like to rest for a day? The officer asked. I won't rest. Next, we'll take over Atlantis and present both Mother Boxes to His Majesty. The Holy Lord shook his head slightly, then asked, by the way, do you have any news on the remaining Mother Box? We've found it. We'll hand it over to you then, and we can present all 3 Mother Boxes to His Majesty together, the officer replied. Very good, then I'll go carry out the remaining tasks. The Holy Lord nodded in satisfaction, and the next moment his figure was already several kilometers away, heading towards Atlantis. 3 hours later, after successfully taking down Atlantis, all the visible forces on the planet were completely under John's control. The Holy Lord, holding 3 Mother Boxes, respectfully returned to the White House, only to see John sitting cross-legged on the ground, several screens in front of him flashing images at 100 times the normal speed. "Have you collected all the mother boxes?" John asked without turning his head. "Yes, Your Majesty, the 3 mother boxes have been retrieved, and Paradise Island and Atlantis have also been incorporated into our territory," the Holy Lord replied respectfully. "Very good, you can leave now after putting down the mother boxes. In a few days, I'll lead you to take down Apocalypse," John said, his eyes fixed on the frantically flashing screens in front of him, which displayed the technology of the entire Kryptonian civilization. Half an hour after the Holy Lord left, John turned off the screens in front of him, then got up and walked towards the 3 mother boxes that the Holy Lord had placed behind him. As a well-known artifact in the DC universe, the mother box possesses a variety of abilities, such as energy transfer, altering the gravitational constant of a region, telepathy, creating sonic boom channels between galaxies, taking over and controlling unconscious machines, matter manipulation, and sustaining the user's life. But what he values most is all the knowledge of the new gods recorded on the mother box. Possessing the mother box would grant access to Apocalypse's technological foundation built over so many years. The accumulated knowledge of Krypton and Apocalypse over countless years completely surpasses Earth's technology. The more advanced the technology, the more complex the knowledge required to understand. Even he would need several months to absorb and internalize it. Once he had fully extracted all the knowledge inscribed on the mother box, he could create a reverse sonic boom channel, directly attack Apocalypse, and then conveniently destroy it. Thinking this, John reopened the screen in front of him, and the massive amount of information about Kryptonian technology flooded his view once more. 4 days later, in the basement of a deserted mansion, Batman stared grimly at the people standing before him. The Flash, Barry Holmes, with his speed, Cyborg, Victor, modified from the mother box, Wonder Woman, Diana, and Superman, Clark Kent. This is the team Batman assembled based on the original DC Comics cast. With the comics backing, he could trust their personalities and fully understand their abilities. "Can we really defeat Homelander?" Victor worriedly asked. "His information is already in my mind, the power to destroy the Earth's surface, his extreme speed. We might not even be able to match his henchmen. If it weren't for his father being enslaved by the Earth Federation during his rebellion, with no chance of recovery, he wouldn't have really wanted to rebel. Possibly, because Homelander isn't without weaknesses." Batman looked at Superman and said, "Even the strongest Kryptonian can't withstand kryptonite and lead. This has already been tested on Superman. The entire basement of the mansion is now encased in lead. Even if he could monitor the entire globe, he wouldn't be able to detect our conversations or our gathering. This gives us a chance to fight back. And Victor, your mother box technology can easily hack into any network, technically deceiving smart devices. On the day of the operation, you can directly use the smart devices of every citizen of the Earth Federation to pull them away from Homelander. That will buy us at least half an hour, isolating Homelander. Then Clark, Diana, and I will use kryptonite in a suicide attack to draw Homelander's attention. The final, fatal blow will be delivered by you, Barry, wielding the kryptonite." Batman stared intently at Barry and said, "At that point, you'll only have one move. Before that, we'll do everything we can to let you see Homelander's location and then aim and fire. The key to this plan lies with you. Only you can pull off that move," Batman solemnly instructed. Facing an enemy many times stronger than them, the margin for error was extremely low. Barry, under Batman's gaze, nodded firmly, gripping the kryptonite dagger in his hand, made from the wreckage of a Kryptonian spaceship. As for before that, we'll play the role of the Justice League in the eyes of the public, nominally submitting to the Earth government, and then finding the right opportunity to deliver the fatal blow," Batman said. "I have a question. Why are you going to such lengths to fight Homelander? Because of the Joker?" Superman asked. "That's part of it, but more so because humanity doesn't need a god. That guy's gone mad. The entire Earth Federation is just a toy in his hands," a voice came from behind Batman. A young man stepped out and smiled. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Luthor, Lex Luthor." Seeing his future nemesis from the comics emerge, Clark's expression changed slightly. "Hey, Superman, I've heard so much about you, but this must be our first meeting," Luthor greeted Superman with a smile. "As I just said, Homelander has gone mad, ever since he was blown up by Ross. Don't be fooled by the Earth Federation's supposed equality for all. He can build all this, and he can destroy it just as easily. And I don't like his bullshit about racial equality. In my eyes, humanity is supreme. Luthor declared maniacally. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.